Hey YouTube, it's Hannah Loba. If you want more MotoAmerica content, check out the new and vastly improved MotoAmerica Live Plus app. It's the only place you can catch all the race action in one place all season long. Click the link in the description below.
The motorcycle road racing season is here, so it's time once again to dial in your draft and pass maneuvers. Time for your team to be at its best, and time to tackle the high banks of Daytona. And with a field of great machines and enormous talent, it's anyone's guess who might lock their name into the history books as the winner at Daytona and as the champion of the Daytona 200. The 82nd running of this historic race is here, so let's go. It's the MotoAmerica AMA FIM North American Road Race Championship on a special weekend. It's the Daytona 200 from Daytona International Speedway, the 82nd running of this historic race, and the sun is shining in Daytona Beach, Florida. Hello everyone and welcome to the broadcast. I'm Greg White, standing alongside two-time national champ Jason Pridmore. Well, Jason, for us, this marks the beginning of the season, and it is so exciting to have the field of motorcycles we have competing in the Daytona 200.
Yeah, 20 years ago, Greg, the middleweight class became the main class as far as the Daytona 200 is concerned, and there's no question this is the most competitive field that we have seen in those 20 years. It might be the most competitive field we've seen in even longer than that. We've got international riders. There's any one of 20-plus riders that can go to the front today and win this race, so it's going to be exciting to watch.
And when the entry list came out, we had 68 riders that were trying to qualify. Look, this is a solo endurance race, 57 laps scheduled. We have 62 riders from 12 countries, Jason, that qualified. That's within our 110% of the fastest time rule. There's a 2 pit stop strategy here. And drafting, Jay, on the high bankings, I mean, this is where you learn how to draft and pass.
There's no question, and that can actually play into some of the role as far as strategy goes, because I believe if you can sit in that 10th, 11th, 12th, there's going to be a big battle at the front before that first pit stop that should come between laps 17 to 20. But maybe you can conserve from some fuel if you can get in that draft early and just stay there and be patient, and that might play into your strategy later on, especially if you can do an extra lap.
You know, looking at that rider count, 62, there's a reason for that. Over the last couple of years, since we arrived on the scene here in MotoAmerica, it's been growing and growing, and it's been growing on the back of races like we had last year. So let's take a look at where we were last year here, Jason, in the Daytona 200. Take us through it.
Well, it was a crazy race here last year. You can see Josh Herrin was on pole, and at the beginning of this race, we had the same thing. A lot of people jostling for position. You see Danny Eslick there. You see Cam Peterson, who isn't with us this year, get jumped out of the seat. But this was the incident that caused a lot of controversy last year. Josh Herrin and Richie Escalante get together in turn 1 after running around for a number of laps. This brought out a late red flag with Teague Hobbs. And you see the red flag comes out. There was a 10-lap restart. There was a lot of things going on in last year's 200, and this was what we had. We had a big draft all the way to the line. You see Josh Hayes in there. Blake Davis was in there. Hayes takes the lead there coming out of turn 6, but it was Josh Herrin who was going to go down to the bottom of the apron there to pip the win off of Hayes again, who is back trying to win this Daytona 200 for what, probably the 20th time.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll see how Josh gets on as well today.
And that race had those 6, kind of 7 riders there right at the end. But Jay, this year, we think it could possibly be, before the first pit stop, could be 20-plus riders in the lead draft.
Yeah, on our screen when we're sitting in there in live timing, there's 20 riders, and there's about 5 or 6 that are off that screen that are right there. Just this morning in the warm-up, there was 20-plus riders within 1.8 seconds of each other. And really here at Daytona, if you're within 2 seconds of the fastest time, you can stay in that lead draft. So it's going to put a lot of pressure on another aspect of this, the crews. The pit stops here are going to be important, and these crews are going to feel a lot of pressure, especially if they're riders up front.
And here's the pit lane rules. So this is 60-kilometer-per-hour speed limit, which is 37 miles per hour. You're allowed 6 crew members over the wall with 1 dedicated fire extinguisher. You can do fuels, tires, repairs if you need it, and pneumatic tools are allowed. That's really important for the speed of these pit stops. Now, yesterday here at Daytona, there was a pit stop challenge. Warhorse HSBK Racing Team participated, and this gives you a good idea. This was for money, Jason.
Yeah.
And the Attack Performance Progressive Yamaha team, Vision Wheel M4 X-Star, Suzuki was in the mix. They're all competing for money, but also Boulder Motorsports, they ended up the big winner. and they were able to do the quickest pit stop, but it also gives you a good idea of how hectic these pit stops can be. Now, that's nice because it was one at a time, but when we get out there onto pit lane, there's going to be riders coming in. When, Jay, what are the laps we're looking at for pit strategy?
I think that you're going to see between 17 and 20, but depending on the strategies of the team and how great it was to see Boulder Motorsports, who brings Stefano Mesa here to Daytona, arguably one of the most successful riders around this place, and they win that pit contest. The thing is, Greg, is it's going to be a completely different thing, though, when the race starts, and the anticipation of your rider coming in, that not making a mistake is going to be huge for those guys.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing what's going on. Hey, when we come back, we're going to have Hannah Lopa on the grid talking to these riders because we have almost 2 hours of racing on deck coming up.
Preparations are continuing to unfold as we look out the windows here at Daytona International Speedway. So have just a moment to remind you that MotoAmerica Live Plus is the only place where you can see all the action from the Daytona 200
MotoAmerica's
live.
coverage of the Daytona 200.
And Roger, it is action that you're not going to want to miss.
No, especially for today, even Greg and Jason just listening to them talk about how deep the field is. Everybody can feel it. And look here, you can see as we see over the grid now, it looks totally different than what it looked like 5 minutes ago as they cleared everybody out. Now it's just the riders and their crew and, how many people that MotoAmerica allows out there at this point. With the tire warmers and certain times they're going to make those guys peel those tire warmers off, and the crews are going to go, the umbrella's going to go, and before long, next thing you know, we're going to be going racing. And I'm just look at Blake Davis. That's another guy we haven't really talked about a lot this weekend, but been consistently pretty quick for a young guy. He did do the 200 last year, but his first year moving up to this class full time.
That is Tyler Scott, our pole sitter, sitting there. That is a look of focus and determination that he has.
And, Tyler, toward the end of last year, was, man, did he really find a couple new steps in his riding and being aggressive and putting it all together, winning those races toward the end. And looks like he carried that right over into this season. And you see the laser focus he has. And it's not just the focus. I think it's the confidence. And I think he comes in this year and knows he's the title favorite in Supersport. This doesn't pay points, but this can set you up for the rest of the season.
And as he is continuing to stay hydrated, you mentioned all these riders are going to go out and do their warm-up laps and get reacquainted with the track now that there is wind out there. We'll be back.
MotoAmerica's coverage of the Daytona 200 is brought to you by Bridgestone Tire. Bridgestone, solutions for your journey.
Back here at Daytona International Speedway, Daytona Beach, Florida. Beautiful day for racing. And let's get right down to the third member of our broadcast team, Hannah Lopa, who's underneath the sunshine.
Greg, winning the Daytona 200 is a victory that has long evaded the Vision Wheel M4XR Suzuki team. This weekend, they have 4 chances at winning the title. One of them is right here, our pole man, Tyler Scott. Tyler, how confident are you that you could be the guy to bring that title home for the team?
Definitely really confident here on pole today, and it's definitely a long race, so we got to keep a good, consistent, fast laps up at the front, and we have a really good team strategy. The team's worked so hard all weekend. They rebuilt a bike the other night after a small crash in QP1, but I'm super excited for the start of the race, and I want to get it going.
Best of luck to Tyler Scott out there. Now, one guy who is absolutely confident that he can win this race is none other than the number 2 of Josh Herron, and that's because he's done it before, most recently here last year. Let's see if we can get a word with Josh while he's just finishing some stretches here. Josh, how important and how much pressure do you feel to defend the title once again this year?
It's just another race, right? I think there's always pressure, always crazy nerves, so it's, I would say, the same as any other one. I got butterflies in my stomach, and I'm nervous.
Nervous could be good. Best of luck out there, Josh, guys.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing what Josh Herron has in store. Now, one note right here is the 147 of Richard Cooper and the PHR Performance Triumph. Now, for Cooper, known as Mini Cooper, he qualified in the 8th spot, Jason. One thing I want to note, he came here as a teenager all the way back in 2004 and did race the Daytona 200 in 2008. And the thing about this guy, he's 150 pounds with his leathers on. He's an absolute rocket ship on the banking. Let's get back down to Hannah.
Well, the name Peter Hickman is absolutely one that sounds familiar to most race fans, but here this weekend making his MotoAmerica debut. How important is this and how exciting is this to be able to kind of tick this off your racing career bucket list, having won so many races around the world?
Yeah, it really is a bucket list place to be, and yeah, I'm super excited for the Daytona 200. It's been like 3 years in the making. It's been quite hard to get here, but here we are. We're having a fantastic time. Myself and Coops have, yeah, I think we're doing a pretty good job, both inside the top 12 in qualifying. So yeah, let's see what we can do.
Well, they are definitely getting attention here, guys, don't you think?
I love it. I got down to talk to both Peter and Richard before the start of this race, Hannah, and it's just great having them here. Here's where they're all going to be doing battle. Here at Daytona International Speedway, 3.56 miles. You can see here 8 left-hand and 4 right-hand turns. Historical place. When these guys get started, Greg, they're starting from pit lane. That's the only real uniqueness about this place. One of the other unique things about this place is they start from pit lane, down into turn 1, into that first international horseshoe. That fast kink in the infield is one you got to be careful of when you've come out of the pits after a stop, into that second horseshoe. Then it's into turn 6, up onto the banking. This is where the drafting and things start. The other very unique thing here at Daytona, down into that chicane. A lot of mistakes can be made there at the beginning of the race when you're following 15, 18 bikes down into there. You've got to be careful and move your brake markers back a little bit. Out of there, again, it's all the way around to this tri-oval, Greg, where a lot of races have been won and lost out of that chicane. So the strategy will start to play itself out once that second pit stop happens.
And it's all about the intimacy with the banking. So how about a closer look inside? This is our Insta 360 track lap. And on the Ray Hall Ducati Motos with roller die informing, it is the 23 of Corey Alexander who takes us for a little run. This is through the chicane and up the banking, Jay.
And from right here, you cut across this paint and that paint, and you want to get in that tuck. And for Corey being 6'2" or 6'3", that's hard to do, but he's in that tuck, and you get right up next to that wall where you see him above the white line there. And then, you know, if you've got guys drafting you, you can feel that coming from behind. And if you've got guys in front of you that you're trying to draft, you're getting sucked into this big, like, wind tunnel. And this is the run back to the tri-oval that I was talking about. This is just going to be wide open, 6 gear, and the start-finish line is right there as you see him come across, and then down into turn 1.
All right, so that's our Insta 360 track lap. Well, how about this guy, 96, Brandon Posh. He's won 2 in the last 3 years. He's 11th place qualifier. Does he have what it takes after 57 laps?
We are now getting closer and closer to the start of the 2024 Daytona 200. It is the 82nd running of this historic race. And with that, we still need to finish out our opening ceremonies. I'm going to go ahead and send it down trackside where we can join in with the action live. And I believe, well, I know who we just saw walking away, Roger, was Tyson Beckford. He was our Grand Marshal today that was giving the command. Everybody is now clearing the grid in terms. There's Tyson Beckford, and we talked to him earlier on this afternoon, and he was pumped to be here. This is an honor for him. You could tell.
It's an honor for him, and especially for a guy that's really into street bikes and does track days, rides Homestead all the time, so he gets to come here and see all these riders. It's going to be different from he's been to MotoGPs and stuff like that, but he's going to get to come here and experience the Daytona 200 for the first time. And it's quite the sight whenever you see all these riders, all 60-something riders come through the tri-oval on that first lap, and everybody's in one big pack.
Put yourself out there right now. 67 riders getting ready to get a look at this racetrack. What is your objective?
Well, right now we've talked about the wind a lot, and right now I would probably try to get a good feel for that wind. It's pretty warm, so you don't have to worry about really trying to get the heat in your tires. But also, it's so warm out there, if your bike has a little problem with overheating, you don't want to go out there and come back with 60-something guys, that you don't want to come back and be sitting on that grid for a long time. It's hot and humid as it is today. If you're in those first couple rows, you might want to, when you come off the banking, kind of slow down a little bit. But right now, they haven't been on the track since this morning. So it is a warm-up lap, but you definitely want to go out there and try to get a good feel for that track, so when the lights go out, you can get down to business right away. It is a long race. You don't want to be too impatient, but also you don't want to get shuffled back.
You can see the wind blowing those flags in the background. Quick reminder, if you want to see the race in its live entirety, go ahead, subscribe right now. MotoAmerica Live Plus. I'm going to send it back over to Greg White and Jason Pridmore.
MotoAmerica's coverage of the Daytona 200 is brought to you by Bridgestone Tire. Bridgestone, solutions for your journey.
Buckle up, ladies and gentlemen, because we are going to bring you the Daytona 200 starting grid. Here in Daytona Beach, Florida, we had initially 68 riders signed up from 13 countries. We now have 62 riders that qualified, all within the 110% rule. And on pole position is Tyler Scott, Mesa, and Bobby Fong. On row number 2, Jason?
A lot of heavy hitters. Hayden Gillum, Josh Herron, and Xavi Flores is riding for that TAC Racing team there on the second row. And then we have Blake Davis, Richard Cooper, Richie Escalante, who set a new lap record here this week. Josh Hayes starting from 10th, Brandon Posh, and who we saw earlier, Peter Hickman. Gerardo, Marvin Fritz, Danny Eslick. Kenepa is a scratch. He's hurt, unfortunately. And Carl Haneke with Kayla Yaakov just outside row 6. Corey Alexander, Ben Young, Matt Truelove, Teague Hobbs is going to start row 8 with Tom Takaras from Australia. Great to see him here, as well as Aussie Dave Anthony, Carl Soltis, Taylor Knapp, and Harry Truelove on row 9. Gus Rodeo, Trevor Dion, and Trevor Daly will be outside row 10. PJ Jacobson, Jason Farrell, Eli Block, Diego Perez, Danilo Lewis, who we've seen in our series for a long time in Tremblay, they're outside row 12. Angles, who we've seen lead this race. Gurin, Maverick Sear, McRae, Tony Storniola, and Jason Waters.
Keep going.
Jankowski, Jorge Erstein, Shane Magos, Matthew Simpson, Rigo Salazar, and Joshua Booth outside row 16. And then we go back a little further. Alan Phillips, Moser, Sierra, Snooks, Michael, and Andrew Bowen.
2 more. Come on, keep going.
Wow. Anthony Fania Jr., who we've seen here a number of years now. Tony Blackall and Ivy. Jessica Capizzi, our only female out there today. Martinez, and I missed somebody there, Greg. Sorry. Hopkins and Eddie Kay will round out the field. And I don't know about you, but it's like the first time I have been to this race in a number of years, and I'm nervous. Like I feel like I'm on the grid almost. I'm glad I'm not, but it has that feel to it. This is going to be an amazing Daytona 200.
Only place to see this live right now is MotoAmerica Live Plus, so you make sure you tune in and check it out. 62 riders here. The homologation for the Daytona 200. The max allowed, Jason, would be 65 riders.
That's amazing.
So we almost hit that number of people that made it in that 110% qualifying time.
And when you look at it, Greg, it's just all about that first turn right now. The first 10, 20, 30 seconds of this race, you just want to get away clean. You just want to be able to get through that first horseshoe clean. So the first 20, 30 seconds of this race are so important, especially for those, say, from row 5 back. It's going to get very heavy in those areas.
The 82nd running of the Daytona 200 is underway with the lights off. And it's a mad dash to turn number 1, and it looks like the number 70 of Ty Scott, your pole sitter on that Vision Wheel M4X Star Suzuki, will lead us through. But Josh Herron also got a good launch. Last year's winner trying for a bit up the inside as they head towards the International Horseshoe, and it's going to be Herron who's going to lead the way.
And I spoke with him before the race as well, and this is his plan. He just wants to stay in that front 5-6 lead group and try to do the best he can. Josh was very calm before it, but he was also, like you said, or like he said in his interview, he was a little bit nervous, had the butterflies, but now the green lights have gone out, Greg. That's what these guys, this is what they want to get this race started. When you sit out there on the grid, it's so easy to be so pensive and nervous and anxiety. Once this race starts, now they're in their happy spots.
Josh Herron on the Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati. That's the Panigale V2 that he is on in his one appearance in the Super Sport category this year. Of course, piloting in the Steel Commander Superbike class for MotoAmerica, and he leads us onto the banking for the first time. But make no mistake, that gap between Herron and the riders behind him, that'll get gobbled up quickly with the draft and pass.
And I mean, you look at it right now, it's if you have a favorite rider in the field, follow him, because they could go from second or first. And, Bobby Fong get a little bit out of shape going into the chicane. You saw that bike snap around on him. That first lap into here, it is so important to be as careful as you can and try not to run straight there. But Bobby Fong, now he's in that draft of Ty Scott, rising that Wrench Motors GSX-R 750. But keep an eye on your favorite rider. You might see him as far up as first or second and as far back as 9th or 10th. maybe even 15th in this first lap. Oh, we did have an incident in the chicane, it looks like. So both riders are up, and our corner workers are going to do their best to try to get that incident cleaned up before this lot gets back around there.
Lead change, and it's Ty Scott on the 70 who takes over the spot.
Keep an eye on that 5th place bike there too. Our baggers champion Hayden Gillum is out there, and he's going to be a guy. You see him running down the outside right now. That's Richard Cooper in 4th. So it's been a good start for somebody that we talked about before the start of the race. But Hayden Gillum's been really quiet this weekend, and he'll find himself, a lot of racecraft in that guy. He'll find himself at the front of this pack most of the day as well, I believe.
Look at the field of riders, and just off there, off the back on the TOBC bike is Danny Eslick, who's won it 4 times. Let's get down to Hannah.
I want to talk about Tyler Scott really quickly, leading the way here. You know, we've known Tyler to be very cool, calm, and collected since he was 14 years old racing in our junior cup, but last year here he only got about 7 laps and was not able to finish the race. He also has no real endurance experience, so he never even got to do a pit stop. So he's definitely got a better idea of the track this year, and he's much more comfortable at setting the pace at the front.
Yeah, sitting here looking at it, I can see Blake Davis and Stefano Mesa as the attack bike is parked. Xavi Fares for the 2nd year in a row. I don't think he made 2 laps last year either, Greg.
No.
So Xavi Fares out on that #1 bike. That's so tough, because these teams, they work so hard and the riders get so excited for this, and for him to be out so early is a real shame. But Richard Cooper, like I said, he's up there, but I saw Mesa and Blake Davis getting into it a little bit in the infield. It's really important to keep your wits about you, keep your nerves down, and try to stay as relaxed as you can this first one. You don't want to have any enemies early. As you can see here on the left part of your screen, smoke coming out of that exhaust of that attack R6.
Right part of your screen looks like a lead change as we head into turn #1. It was Heron for a moment.
There's another bike that just has come down that front straightaway, Greg, and it is smoking as well.
See it off in the background.
See it in the background there. So this place, it takes a toll on motors. Some people come here, they'll have qualifying, and then they'll throw a new motor in for the race, and you can see some barging going on behind these guys. This is exactly what I was talking about, and it looks like, is it the 64 Max Angles? Max had done a nice job of getting himself pretty far up the order there, considering, and it's too bad to see him out early. But these guys are banging into each other. I saw it again in the horseshoe. Blake Davis has got himself into 4th place at a 49.9 that last time through on our first flying lap. The 22 was the quickest. So I can see Marvin Fritz back there too. Our first 12 riders are all together at the moment.
Blake Davis, of course, out of Virginia on the N2 Racing bobblehead Moto Yamaha R6. Before Richie Escalante broke the track record earlier this weekend with his 147.833. Blake Davis had the lap record from last year.
And one of the things, Greg, that I think that you and I should talk about is you can see this gaps develop between 12th and 13th. This is what happens when a bike goes and blows up in front of you. We saw Xavi Flores just now. That probably created one gap, and then we saw Max Angles. Those gaps get created because the riders behind the bike that's smoking check up, and then these gaps start to create. So you look at the first 11, 12 guys right now in that lead group. There's 12 of them up front. The next group now have got to stay organized and try to reel this group back in, and especially before they get to traffic. We're going to get to traffic earlier this year than we did last year because of the size of the field. Bobby Fong pulls up alongside Heron as Ty Scott is going to lead again, but Heron's going to draft on through.
A good pass late. Here comes Richard Cooper. So Richard Cooper now, the 147 to lead, as it looks like Danny Eslick ran off on the TOBC Racing. But Cooper with his leg up, and he looked behind him. Not sure what happened to Richard Cooper.
He might have caught a false neutral there, Greg, and then not been able to get on the gas the way he wanted to, and maybe checked everybody up, and it's more of an apology, it looked like to me, than anything else. Sometimes that can happen when you get the draft into turn 1 the way he did. You sometimes just don't get that last downshift completed, so it happens late, and you end up going through there a gear too tall, and then you feel like you've slowed everybody up. That's probably what Coop was telling him.
There's also a tire war going on here as we're working lap number 4 of this Daytona 200 race, and we expect the pit window for the first pit stop to open somewhere between lap 16, 17, 18, 19 time frame when riders are going to start coming in. Of course, Bridgestone is here, Dunlop is here, and Pirelli as well. I want to make note that so far the fastest lap of the race is Carl Haneca with a 148.628 in race trim for the 9th place rider on his Yart Yamaha.
And some people might remember that name from Moto 3 and so forth, but Carl Haneca is part of the very powerful Yart World Endurance team, the world champions from last year. Marvin Fritz is also part of that team, as well as Nicola Kenepa. Kenepa sadly got hurt yesterday. He's not taking part. I went down and saw the team prior, and Nico said he loved it here. He absolutely loved it, and he was just wanting to be out there so bad, but he hurt his shoulder yesterday. But I expect Marvin Fritz and Haneca to both be right in this fight, because they're getting experience right now of what this drafting is going to be all about. And there's probably nobody more experienced than their crew that are in there waiting for these pit stops to happen. Now, Greg, what happens at the start of this, all these guys are feeling each other out. It's literally all they're doing. Who is here? Who's going to be eliminated? Who's going to kind of stick around for the race? Who do I want to ride around, right? That's what this is all about in these opening laps. So you can see we've got about 12 guys on that lead group. Josh Hayes is at the back of this group. So it's just a matter of keeping your nose clean right now. Ty Scott, look how far back he's fallen, Greg. The number 70 is back in 9th.
Betting is now available for MotoAmerica fans. Go to nxtbets.com/playma. For more information, visit MotoAmerica.com. It's not available everywhere, so go check out to see if betting for MotoAmerica is available in your area. Daytona 200, 5 laps in the books as our lead group is starting to form up. The butterfly's long gone, the tire's up to temperature. People have started to sort themselves out of where they fall in this group. It spreads out heading up to the banking, and then it starts to gather itself back together. To give you an idea of top speeds, if you're in a draft, some of these bikes are going in excess of 182 miles an hour. If you're pulling somebody along, you're about 169 miles an hour.
Walking around this paddock for the last 2 days, I was asking a number of people, so, who do you think? And the guy that they kept on talking about is the one that's out front right now, Richie Escalante. He's been able to just put fast lap times in over and over, and you can see Herron squeezing up against that wall with Richard Cooper just to his inside. So far, this is a great showing for the 147, Greg, and he's right where you thought he would be, right up in that lead pack, lead draft. Lots of experience from that guy. And then you can see there, just behind them, the 98, Carl Haneca, Blake Davis, and Hayden Gillum. So all those guys are still there.
Wrenched motorcycles on the GSXR 750 is Bobby Fong, who now leads it, and he led over the line, so he'll be credited with a lap led. He gets by Richie Escalante. Jay, so far by my tick marks, we're already at 13 lead changes to this point.
Amazing. Yeah, you're going to be a busy guy, I think, there.
I'm going to lose track.
You're going to lose
100%.
track. You are definitely going to lose track, especially in some of our shorter races. I've seen you do that quite a bit, but I think in this one, you're definitely going to lose track. I'm a little bit bummed right now. I'm seeing Josh Hayes get dropped off the back. You can see on our screen there, Brandon Posh is at the tail end of this group, and that is the guy as well that I kind of think he is here. He's having fun. He looks so relaxed in all the interviews, and he's been here before, Greg. He's not going to let these guys all get away, but he's going to let them fight in front of him and eliminate themselves if so. So he's just kind of sitting back there now. As one of the riders goes wide. I believe that's Marvin Fritz, who probably went a little bit wide. Pretty easily to recognize Fritz and Carl Haneca in their World Endurance leathers, their Yart leathers. So he went a little bit wide. He should be okay. He should be able to get back into the back of Brandon Posh and go with him. So this time last lap, Escalante was leading by a good margin. You can see that is gone now. Bobby Fong and Herron's there. Hannah?
And we talked to Herron on the grid about, does he feel that need, the pressure to win back-to-backs after last year? And he said, not really, I'm not feeling the pressure for that. Something that I am feeling a little bit more pressure about, however, is racing with people that I have no experience racing around, because it can be unpredictable. He doesn't necessarily know what riders like Fritz or Haneca, or even someone like Blake Davis, who is making his way up through the MotoAmerica classes. He can't expect what they're going to do, but the one thing Josh Herron does know is Daytona, and he is going to control what he can control for the duration.
Yeah, like Richard Cooper now has moved his way to second place, and there's a rider that Herron's not going to be familiar with on the racetrack as Cooper tries to make a bit around the outside. That is a long way around, but Herron controls that inside line, pushes Richard Cooper wide, and he's going to lose a handful of spots as they head off to the International Horseshoe. Well played by the number 2.
Yeah, and I think for Herron, this is where he wants to be. He's going to continue to find himself back up that front. I think you got about 3 or 4 guys. I talked to Josh before the start of this race, like I said, and one of the things he brought up was he's going to kind of make a decision on when to pit and who to pit with. It's very important here when you pit at Daytona that you have a dance partner to go back out with, because you need that draft and redraft. And if it's somebody that you trust or somebody that you're comfortable riding around, it makes that much easier. So these guys are going to be getting pit boards, and we'll talk maybe about that next lap by grade. You can tell us where those pit boards are being shown. Here's Marvin Fritz, and there's Josh Hayes. You can see Josh is just off the back. He's not going to be too worried at this moment because he realizes it is a long 57 laps. Josh Hayes here trying to win again after, what was it? I can't remember what year it was that he actually won the 200. Then he had a problem after the race technical. 2007. He's been trying to win it since, and he's come oh so close so many times. So he's not going to be too anxious here just yet.
That was during the days when we ran Formula Extreme middleweights in the middle, or during the Daytona 200. Well, the field has sorted itself out right now, and if you look at Josh Herrin all the way down to Marvin Fritz and even Josh Hayes, who's still in the picture, we have 12 riders in this lead draft. As they fan out on the straightaway, as they come to that start-finish line, it's going to be Richard Cooper who leads officially the 147.
Now, we lost Blake Davis. I'm looking for him here, Greg. He's been in this lead group the whole time. And
we lost him.
We've lost him, haven't we? I'm wondering if he's ran straight down there in the chicane or what that might have been. From our vantage point here, you see Coop get into that international horseshoe a little bit too deep. So Richard Cooper keeps trying to lead this race, and he did a good job of leading it through turn one, but he wasn't able to kind of keep the bike on the rails. Runs a little wide in the international horseshoe. That puts him back. And look at, see, this is what happens, Greg. This field of 14, 15 that we had, now what are we down to? Probably 8, 9 at the front. So you can see Mesa just off the back. That's 9 guys, and then Fritz and Josh Hayes behind them.
On the banking, lap number 8 of 57, the Daytona 200. And just like we expect for this first stint before our first pit stop, another lead change takes place. You can see Richard Cooper on that bright Triumph right there in second place. And it is Richie Escalante, the 54.
Hayden Gillum just went straight in the chicane too. This is exactly what happens. Now he's, as far as the lead draft, Gillum will never see these guys again. It's going to have to be a great pit stop. It's going to have to be some race strategies and things like that. But that's what happens. It's so easy to follow 5, 6 bikes in there. It's, again, you feel like you're getting pushed in there. And once you realize that your bike's not slowing down, you have no choice but to just go straight. Hayden Gillum now is going to find himself back there trying to fight his way back through with Danny Eslick and so on. We are down to 8 guys now that are really in this lead draft. Gillum now is back with Josh Hayes. That could work for him, because if him and Josh get together, they can start to pull each other along.
Yeah, you can see that looks like Marvin Fritz kind of in no man's land with Hayden Gillum and Josh Hayes back there. So if those two can work together and figure out a way to close up this gap. But what they need, Jason, is this lead group to start infighting in the infield, because drafting and passing on the banking doesn't really slow
I really
you down.
don't think they will, though. You have too much knowledge here. These guys know that, and I'm really impressed with the rider fourth on our screen there, Carl Haneke. He is just literally watching what guys are doing, learning with every lap, feeling what these guys are all about, and he realizes it. Both him and Richard Cooper, this is incredible for both of these guys that they've stayed there. There's Brandon Posh, Ty Scott, Mesa. These guys have all been around here. I know Ty Scott's young, but he's seen what's going on as far as his teammates and things in the past. Now, Escalante looks like he's trying to make a break. He's been fast in that infield all weekend long, and he's got through it on his own this lap. And I tell you, Greg, it gives you such a big boost of confidence when you don't have anybody draft by you, because you think, man, have I finally broke these guys a little bit? And you're really racing back to your pit board to see. We see our very first back markers coming up. Last year, if you remember, it was some 14 or 15 laps until we saw any of them. Now we're on lap 9 of 57 as we get a good look at one of those Yamahas, Marvin Fritz, coming out of the chicane. But Escalante has broke away. Now Bobby Fong and Herrin are going to take note of that. They're going to do their best to get past Richard Cooper and then try to pull everybody back along and get back up behind that number 54.
So Escalante with the largest lead we have seen so far in the 2024 edition of the Daytona 200. About half a second, and that's on the back of sector number 1 fastest split, 56.616 seconds. But you have lap traffic coming in, and the blue flags will fly, Jay, but interestingly enough, it just kind of depends on where you catch them.
That's right.
And what lines these back markers are taking.
So you watch here, Escalante is going to be able to get past this guy before the kink, and I think that everybody else might have a problem doing that before the kink. See that? So Bobby Fong just got balked going in there, and he's going to get ran wide. That's going to create a bigger gap for Escalante, as all these riders have now made their way through, but these are the gaps that get created, and you'll see that Escalante will end up getting a bigger gap, and now he's caught up to the 55. He's going to go past him on the inside, and Herron's going to be the next guy to maybe get held up just a little bit. But look, the number 2, if there's a guy that is going to put a qualifying lap in on lap 10 of a race, it's that number 2 of Josh Herron. He sees what's going on up ahead of him, and he doesn't want to let Escalante get away. Bobby Fong the same, and Cooper now finds himself in 4th, but no reason to real stress yet. There's a 7-second gap between Josh Hayes in 11th and PJ Jacobson.
Left part of your screen, Jason, take a look at Tyler Scott. And it looks like there was like maybe the pad on the back of the seat flew off.
Yep.
It looks like it bounced off of Stefano Mesa's bike.
Yep. He's going to have seen that and know that it was nothing off of his, so that's going to be okay. And you can see Herron doing everything he can now to try to catch back up. Escalante's pushing the pace of this race. His last lap through was a 1:49.497. It was half a second quicker than the guy behind him at that point, which was Bobby Fong. As you can see, this tail ender staying at the top of the banking. It's going to allow everybody here to go through, and this is going to be something common that we're going to see throughout the course of the day, of guys just trying to get through the lap traffic as clean as they can. And you always want to be the first one to him, Greg. Like, Escalante can really determine what he wants to do, and you can see Herron that last time through was a little bit quicker. Hannah.
We saw Richie Escalante make the step up to Superbike and did really well in his rookie season, but he said he has never felt more at home being back on the 750. He still very much feels like a Supersport racer, and that was something he kind of struggled with last year on the bigger bike. He said he's still riding it like a Supersport machine, so really happy to be on that bike. He said he's not thinking about the result much. He just wants to finish this year, but I'm sure he's surprised himself being out front so early on.
Oh, Herron runs wide. Ooh. Herron did all the work to get back up to the back of Escalante, and then ran wide going into 6th. But Escalante got held up a little bit in the kink, and that allowed everybody to pull back in. But Herron's going to have to do all that hard work again, Greg, and now you have to ask yourself, how much is he going to be punishing this tire? We're about 7 laps away, I believe, until that pit window starts to open up. And Herron's going to do the same job he just did by trying to pull this field back up to the back of Escalante. He just got into turn 6 there, a little bit too deep, got out to the dirty part of the track, but look at how hard these guys are pushing to get back up. And really, Greg, now you've got the front 6 again. You know, we're down to 6 guys. We started off with about 14, now we're down to 6 up in that lead group.
And it just adds to the pressure of only having 6 in the lead group. When they do come in for those pit stops, the crews have got to be spot on in order to keep their rider in the fight. And for second place, that's Bobby Fong going around Herron. And Herron is going to draft right past. And again, these are next generation motorcycles. So if you're joining us for the first time in many years and you're wondering, what's a GSXR 750 doing against a Ducati Panigale V2 and a Yamaha R6? This is next generation rules, and there is a lot of balancing at play, especially with the next generation motorcycles that have ECUs that are controllable, like the GSXR 750, like the Panigale V2, and like the Triumph Street Triple as well.
I can see Bobby Fong making gestures to his crew. Those pit boards are on that short run there out of the International Horseshoe. It'll be on riders left. I see a black flag out also for somebody. But that's what you see when you see riders. You might start seeing riders acknowledging their crew. Escalante now, Greg, has gone 2.5 laps without being drafted, and he's probably wondering how big his gap is. And you can see now he's going to be in a position where he will probably get drafted back either down into the chicane or get drafted to the start-finish line by 2 other very seasoned riders, Bobby Fong and Josh Herron. I saw Richard Cooper in a double draft coming to the line that last time by, and he let off almost like he knew that these guys were going to be the guys that could help pull him back up to the front. So pretty pretty good stuff there. As you saw Herron get real close to the wall, but look, Greg, now they have ran that 54 back down. When that happens, you can almost take a little bit of a breath now. Okay, he tried to get away. He didn't get away for Escalante. He made a big push. Wasn't able to continue to make that break. And now it's going to be first pit stops here in about 5 or 6 laps.
Great sounds of the motor screaming at full song on the banking here at Daytona. Lap traffic off to the right. It's the 54 you're looking at, the Vision Wheel M4 Star Suzuki, but it's the wrench motorcycle of Bobby Fong that goes to the lead. And just like that, it looks like the number 2 Josh Herron took it for a moment on that Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati, but it's going to be Bobby Fong who takes the spot. All the while, Richard Cooper able to close up and get on the back wheel of Escalante. Jay, it wouldn't surprise me if for Escalante that was something he had planned to see how hard he needed to push and how much of a gap. And then he said, okay, good, I got it. Well, if I push really hard late in the session, then maybe I can get a second or 2.
There's no question, and now he knows. But here's the thing. So far, all the back markers that we've come across, you see Herron with his leg out just a little bit. That's so that guys know behind, hey, we're catching some back markers here. If I check up, that's why I'm checking up. It's one thing, Greg, to pass one at a time. These guys are going to start coming up on back markers in big packs of riders, and that's where the problems will really have to sort. Just like this right here, Bobby Fong gets through, Josh Herron doesn't, and he's going to have to take the long way around. So you put yourself at more risk. You get out to the dirty part of the track, the bike spins a little bit more. Now Bobby Fong, he's going to be drafting through these guys, and then you're going to see some speed differentials between the top bikes and some of the tail enders, and that's what you're going to, and this is how this race goes and playing itself out. Once you start getting into the tail enders, Greg, it becomes a thing that you have to deal with every single lap. You can see the blue flags being waved, but if you're in a pack of 4 or 5 guys racing against whoever you're racing against, then you're going to get lapped by all the leaders. It can get really messy. So we'll see if this group stays together, this 6 group, this riders that are 6 wide or 6 in a line, and we'll see how that changes things. Carl Haneke with a 48.6 early in the race. Now these guys are kind of rolling around at low 49s the last couple of laps.
With this lap traffic, you got to play it right. Now, it can hurt you and help you.
That's right.
If you get held up in the infield, but you do get a couple lappers that are there that you can draft off of, even if there is a bit of a gap, it can definitely help you. So Herron trying to go around kind of the wide line, but Richie Escalante has to go inside out, and he'll lose a bike length or 2.
Yep.
But this has really started to gap now with Richard Cooper's up to, because Ty Scott has passed Richard Cooper at the line for 4th place. But here is that battle. So there's Cooper right there, the bike, extreme left part of your screen. And in that black and red Vision Wheel M4 Star Suzuki, the number 70 is Ty Scott. And then Haneke on the 98 is on that Yart motorcycle.
Yep. And these 3 guys here, if they can get clean runs and the other guys get a little bit of traffic, that's what they need. But this is how this gets fractured. You got 3 in the front now, then you got another chasing 3 behind, and right now we've got some clear track. So the 3 most experienced guys are really at the front of this race at the moment.
Wow, starting to spin the rear tire is Bobby Fong. He was almost up and out of the saddle. That's going to blow his drive. And Herron is going to go for the lead. The Daytona 200 is fast and furious like we like it here in Daytona International Speedway. Into the chicane we go with 44 laps to go. And Bobby Fong maintains that lead, and he wants to be the first through the lap traffic.
Yeah, it's just so key. And the neat thing is at this point, these guys, all 3 of these guys know each other so well. Think about how many laps Josh Herron and Richie Escalante did around this track last year together. I mean, they were just back and forth with each other nearly the whole, that whole stint, that last stint. And you can see Escalante is going to draft back past that Ducati, or attempt to, as Herron goes back through. And those guys are going to lead their way down into turn number 1. Another clean lap. But minute 50.4 that last time through.
Just under 43 laps to go in the Daytona 200. We have 15 in the book, so we expect the pit stop window to open up here in the next couple of laps. The first critical run into pit lane. And it looks like back in 20th place, we have Kayla Yakov. Fan favorite Yakov on that Ray Hall Ducati Moto with Expel Ducati Panigale V2, who went into the pits.
Yeah, she's been running like 17th, Greg, so she's going to be the first one that we've seen in the pits on lap 14. Seems a little early. So, but don't forget that the team has to service 3 riders. So they've got PJ Jacobsen. And it looks like a normal pit stop for Kayla, her first Daytona 200. Talked to her today, and she said, hey, we're just getting things better and better. It's almost like a test for this team right now. They had a really tough Thursday, Greg, and they've been going back and forth and getting these bikes better. Even in warm-up this morning, both her and PJ and, of course, Corey Alexander making some big changes. Looked like a good pit stop for Kayla.
Hannah?
Yeah, guys, there was kind of a question mark on how it was going to go. That had been practicing avidly, and it looks like it went pretty well from where I was standing. The thing that really impressed me about Kayla is you've got so many big names in racing that have come here to run the high banks of Daytona, and they all said first impressions, they were scared to death, more scared they've ever been at any racetrack. And I asked Kayla, how was it your first time out? She said, I was wide open on the banking on the first lap.
Wouldn't expect anything more from her, would you? So
Aaron to the lead. The number 2 for the moment into turn 1. Bobby Fong has position on the inside, but Heron sweeps around. That was kind of a weird line. Checks up, but nose to tail. We have Josh Heron, number 2. Number 50 is Bobby Fong. Number 54 is Richie Escalante. Starting to drift back by a couple of seconds is Tyler Scott, Richard Cooper, Carl Hanukkah, and then another 4 seconds back from them is Mesa Posh.
Look at Bobby Fong. See him shaking his head to his team. Don't be surprised if he ducks into the pit lane on this time. That window's starting to open. This will be lap 17 when they come through. So he's either going to pit now or he's seen a P2 on his board. As I'm looking out my window, I can see PJ Jacobsen coming into the pits as well. So those Ducatis for the Ray Hall team are actually just pitting a little bit earlier than I had expected. So, and I think part of that, Greg, probably is caused by some of the bad luck that they had on Thursday. They probably didn't get too many long runs, and the last thing you want to do is leave your rider out there stranded with no fuel. So they'll be able to see how much fuel is actually going in that tank, and then they'll be able to adjust their mileage, adjust when they want to get back out, or when they want to maybe do that second pit stop. It might be a lap longer the next time through. So with Kayla in and PJ in, we're going to expect probably to see Corey Alexander come in shortly.
That's the Ray Hall Ducati Moto with Expel. Rider PJ Jacobsen running number 15 this year, not the 99. So get used to that all season long in Super Sport. And back to the high banks we go.
And Heron looks like he's making a gesture. I saw his hand come off the bar. Don't know if that means he's coming in on this lap. Bobby goes low, Heron's low. It looked like, yep, Heron's got that right leg out as well. So I saw him gesture, and this is probably exactly what he wanted. Escalante comes into the pits with him, and these two guys, you know, the thing is, Greg, is that they can run around with each other. They see each other. Heron gives him the thumbs up. I mean, it was a year ago that I'm sure that thumbs up wasn't going to be too accepted on a Sunday at the end of that Saturday night, but now they're going to go back out. They can go out and run together. Now, the pressure is on the crews. The crews got to do their job. They got to get their men in, out. They got to stay relaxed and calm.
So here we go. Up onto the jack stand it goes, both front and rear. Escalante has to get off the bike. The fuel goes in. Chloe hands Richie a little bit of a drink. He gets some in his system, and the tire's going on. It looks like a good, clean front wheel on the left-hand part of your screen for Josh Heron. He's already ready rolling, and he's getting ready to get out on the racetrack, and he's close to the pit out. Hannah?
And I don't know if you noticed this, but his new teammate in the Superbike class this year was actually the one refueling the bike, and watch that really inspired confidence to have Loris there supporting him. He trusts him, and he knew that with those 4 seconds, he could probably offer some funny words of encouragement that Josh would appreciate from probably nobody else.
Yeah, that's pretty cool to see him there, but man, that Ducati team did exactly what they needed to do. Now watch this guy. He's going to come out of the pits, Greg, with his hair on fire. These laps here are just as important as any other lap, as Corey Alexander is now in the pits. And you saw that Warhorse team was able to get their guy out of the pits a lot earlier than Escalante. Escalante's got some work to do. Looks like the pit stop here for Corey Alexander. Good, clean stop for them. Corey must have made a mistake early because he was running about 15th. 16th spot, and then he went off our screen. So I'm assuming, Greg, that he probably ran wide or long into the chicane somewhere. Bobby Fong now out front. He had a 3-second lead on Ty Scott. He's coming to the bottom. You're going to see the number 50 rider. Is he going to go around one more lap? He's going to go around one more lap. Does the 50. Now this plays a big role as far as fuel strategies go, Greg, and right now he's pushing his own win. Look at the difference in lap time when you push your own win. 51.5, and he was doing mid-50s just a lap before.
Yeah, plus his speed was 161, where when he was in a draft, it was well into the 170s. And we know that there is a penalty for P.J. Jacobson, a speeding pit lane penalty for the number 15 bike. More pit stops on the right part of your screen.
Yeah, Carl Hanukkah has come in now along with Ty Scott. You can see, let's see if these M4 guys can get this done a little bit better. You see the boss. Is that Chris Orch there on the fuel?
Yeah.
It looks like it. Chris doing the fueling. Hanukkah gets out. You'd expect nothing more from that Yart team. Great stop for them. And look, they're going to go back out together. So they're going to be able to work together now and try to pull each other back forward. And I bet you, Greg, they're going to go out somewhere around where Escalante is. So we'll keep an eye out and see the difference between Escalante and these two guys here. But expect this guy coming in next lap.
And as a reminder, that's a 60-kilometer or 37-mile-an-hour pit lane speed limiter. There is a line that says you have to be at that speed here, and then the exit line. And you see a lot of riders crossing that on the way out. And as soon as they cross that line, it is all throttle until you have that tight left turn that takes you on the pit out lane. So Bobby Fong, Wrench Motorcycle, GSXR, Suzuki, that's the 750, one of the next generation bikes. And it's so good to see Bobby Fong at the top of the board. But a 151.528 pushing his own air. And this is the question, who went out with who? And how much are they going to be able to draft each other? Because it looked to us like when Josh Herron went out, he was all by himself. There's the leg out for Bobby Fong. He's signaling to the riders behind him that he's coming into the pits. He's got to get the thing slowed down by the time pit entrance happens right there. And that's your 37-mile-an-hour limit.
This feels like an eternity. You just feel like you're just absolutely parked, sitting there when you come down pit lane, especially on that pit lane speed limiter. Let's see how this Wrench team gets Bobby Fong in and out. Very calm, very relaxed as they come in.
They're going rear tire only,
It
Jason.
looks like it. I could see somebody looking at that front tire. That's Robbie Peterson on the right, I believe.
They're struggling with the rear, struggling to get it off. He finally got it off.
That's Nick Seiling on the rear wheel there, trying to get that rear wheel back in. I thought it was Robbie, but it's not Robbie.
Nope, so basically for Bobby, you're not allowed to touch that bike until the fuel is off the bike. So they get him going. A little bit of struggle, but okay. Here's Josh Hayes, the number 4. So for Hayes on that CSU 1 Cure J-Force Racing Yamaha R6, they're trying to get the veteran back on and out onto the racetrack. And now these are the times, Jay. We need all these pit stops to sort themselves out before we see who's really doing what.
I'm going to tell you right now, there's Richard Cooper, another team that's just going to try to get their rider in and out as quickly as we can. Okay, so we are understanding now that they actually had a problem with this bike. They had to push it back, so it's going to be a bit of a long stop for Cooper. Hey, man, that Warhorse team, they did their job. I believe that it's going to be Josh Herron that's going to be leading this race, and not just by a small margin. I think he's going to be leading by a pretty good margin once this sorts itself out. And the reason I say that is that when I saw Bobby Fong leaving pit lane, I saw Josh Herron go through the tri-oval at full stop. So also finding out what happened to Blake Davis a little bit earlier, Greg, he actually tipped over in turn 6. So that was the reason for that.
Let's check in with Hannah about how pit stops went.
You know, watching a lot of them up and down the pit lane, I think what separates a really good pit stop from a great pit stop isn't necessarily the physical speed of the pit crew's movement, but more about the precision with which they execute those quick changes. So if you're smooth and deliberate, it will definitely have a big impact. Someone like Richie Escalante, you know, he ended up running over a front stand that wasn't even from someone from his crew, so he left feeling really frustrated. But when Tyler Scott came in for his change, very concise, very deliberate movements, and he certainly had a bit of a faster pit stop than Richie even.
It's so crazy, Hannah, that you can have the pace to win, but when you come down pit lane, it is just as important, if not more important, than the actual spinning fast laps. It looks like Brandon Posh just ran out of gas. He's been going around, Greg, and going around, and he's leading this race, but now you can see that Suzuki's, it looks like it's starting to sputter. So they've tried to push the limit. What are we on, lap 19? He's not going to make it back around. If that thing's sputtering right now in the infield, he might be able to make it, but it doesn't look good right now for the 96. As you can see that bike, he's going to have to go to the apron, and he's going to have to short shift this bike and try to make it all the way around. So for the 96, the 2-time Daytona 200 winner, this is going to be a problem now. As you can see him trying to stay low on that banking, and he's running out of gas. And we saw this, what, 2 years ago with Josh Herron?
Yeah, we did.
So, you know, when you push that first fuel window, you got to remember, you have a sighting lap, you got a warm-up lap. So this is actually like lap 21 on that bike. And when you start trying to open that to where you think that you have the fuel mileage, unless you have been super consistent and ran race distances in your practices, it's really, really hard to gauge the fuel and how much fuel you're using. He's doing a great job of getting this bike around right now, and I guarantee you his heart is in his stomach at the moment.
Yeah, he's just hoping that bike doesn't stop. You can see him kind of working it left and right, just trying to see if any of the fuel in the tank is going to get to the fuel pump. Brandon Posh, this is a bit of a heartbreaker as we're still waiting for this entire field to sort themselves out, but here he comes. Is he going to have enough to get him there, Jay?
Yeah, he's there now. He has done a really good job, and for anybody that's ever had this problem, you have to understand, like, this guy knew what he was doing. He was running out of gas out of the first horseshoe, which is amazing to think that he's actually, you can see him shaking it there. It's amazing to think that he made it that far around. I honestly didn't think he would, so good on him for that. But this is going to kill a lot of chances for him as I see Herron flash across the start-finish line right now, and Brandon just coming to a stop.
Well, that's all he could do with 37 laps to go in the Daytona 200. He's won it twice in the last 3 years. And Hannah, oh, and a big fuel dump. So unfortunately, the brake on the fuel can didn't quite close itself.
And now you leave pit lane, you think, how much of that's on my rear tire? How much is it all over me?
On the motor.
Is the cap itself closed? Am I gonna get fuel all over me now? So he's gonna have to be really careful on his outlap. So sadly, this is the kind of stuff that we see sometimes at Daytona where it's not so much the riding side of it that has cost us. It's gonna be just something simple by trying to push it one too many laps. That's all it is.
It's bad luck.
You're exactly right. Yep.
And that's it. I mean, it takes speed. It takes a really good crew to have fast pit stops, but it also takes some luck here in the Daytona 200. So Brandon Posh, the number 96, back out on the racetrack. He's on that Vision Wheel M4X Star Suzuki RST sponsored bike.
I want you to pay attention too. If you see this thing, it's Keith Perry who's done this 100 times as he gets it out.
That's just bad luck.
Exactly. It just stuck open, didn't it, Greg? And
yeah.
So the tank was full, and you can see him getting just a little bit sideways on his way out on that fuel.
That system is designed like the valve, when he pushes it down, the valve opens and dumps it. It just didn't quite get it closed when he disconnected it.
But what I want to pay attention to now, when we circle back through this next lap by, it's going to be Josh Herron leading on his first flying lap. Here comes the number 2 to the tri-oval now. He went 49.3, Greg, on his first flying lap on that new tire, and he's going to have almost a 10-second lead on the next guy that's going to come through. And we'll wait for that to happen as he goes through at a 49.9. So Herron probably had a little bit of traffic on that lap. The next guy through is going to be Richie Escalante, 10.7 second lead. That's how quick it was in the pits for that Warhorse team. What it does now for this guy takes a lot of pressure off. Once he sees on his pit board to the left here in a minute, he's going to look over, see him looking at that pit board and give it a nod. He just got to see he's got a 10-second lead. Now he can take his time through some of these back markers. If he gets himself into a position, Greg, where he has to think, should I or shouldn't I? He doesn't have to anymore. He can actually take his time a little bit and get this bike to that second pit stop.
Now the thing I will say is that second place is Richie Escalante and third place is Ty Scott. Both Vision Wheel M4X Star Suzuki riders. They're only separated by 0.7 of a second. If Escalante and Scott can get together, they could use each other in the draft and pass to help mitigate some of that lead for Josh Herron. But Escalante is going to have to look behind him and see his teammate Scott, or Scott's going to have to put in some miraculous flyer because you can see the gap is starting to increase.
And what does it do to a tire? You know, that's the biggest thing, right, Greg? Is it's Escalante now knows he's got to try to make up for the mistake in the pits. So he's going to be grinding that Dunlop rear tire for this whole session, and it puts a lot of pressure on him now. And the funny thing about Daytona, Greg, is you can come off that turn 2 banking over there, and he'll be able to see Herron up ahead in the chicane. And all he's trying to do then, as you can see, he's gone the fastest first split of the race, has this man Escalante. I know that he can run high 48s or low 49s, but it's going to be tough. Herron also was only a 10th off. Herron does his best first split, right?
And that's the hardest part. We're at Escalante with a brand new tire, yes, but also a full fuel load. He only goes a 1/10 of a second quicker in sector number 1. He does get another 1/10 back in sector number 2. So about 3/10 of a second is all Escalante could do to chip into Herron's lead, and that takes it to 10.4 seconds.
And all the clear track. Both riders now have a bunch of clear track, and Herron will be able to look over to the right and see, he knows there's nobody back there. That's a great feeling for him to have this early in the race. I know we're only on lap 23, but that's a great feeling for Herron to have at the moment, and his crew should be high-fiving themselves down there for the job they did.
What a flurry of pit stops we had, and now the race is sorting itself out in our second sector of this race. So much more to come. Herron up onto the banking with 34.5 laps to go and a pit stop under our belt. And Josh Herron, who won a national championship 2 years ago with this Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati Panigale V2, gets on this thing for the Daytona 200, wraps up a win, and now is in control of this race for the moment. And Jay, I say for the moment because not only do we have 35 laps left, but we have at least one more pit stop to go.
That's exactly right, but when you start to look at what's going on here and we start cycling through these pit stops, Greg, let's look and see who the big winners and the losers were. Obviously, Herron, big winner. Escalante and Ty Scott running second and third right now. Hayden Gillum and Bobby Fong. Bobby Fong, big loser there in that pit stop as well, as it took him some time. Hanukkah there in 6th. Hayes 7th. Mesa, Fritz, Brandon Posh, unfortunately, all the way back down to 10th. And another couple guys. Richard Cooper now back to 16th.
Into turn number 1 we go with our second place rider, Richie Escalante. On that Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzuki, and his teammate number 70, Ty Scott, your pole sitter, behind him. Scott, of course, working a right shoulder that was knocked out of its socket a couple days ago. And he kept telling me, Jay, yeah, I'm fine, no problem.
Yeah.
Now look, we all know Daytona is not the most physical racetrack in the world. But your shoulder, Hannah, it's got to be painful at some point.
It's definitely painful when it was dislocated, but they got it back in right away, and that part hurt too. It's sore on the bike, especially when he tucks in on that banking, rotating his elbows downward, really kind of pulls on the shoulder. He said this morning, though, was feeling much, much better than it did all day yesterday.
Well, that's good. And normally it's that second day, Jason, you talk about that's the most painful.
And
so.
I saw him today. His handshake, Greg, was strong still. You said it yesterday, and I know he's good. But to your point earlier, it'd be so much nicer if he could close that 1.8 second gap up to Escalante and they could work together a little bit. I mean, that is going to make a difference on the bankings and the speed. Look at Escalante. Just continues to keep setting 56.3 again. He's got down into the 48s. He went 48.9 last lap. So he was 0.6 quicker than Herron than that on that last time through. The big thing is it's the traffic, isn't it? Like where you catch him, how you catch him. But right now he's putting his head down. It's at 9.917, and I believe it started off at about 10.5 seconds. So Herron clicks off another lap here of 50.5. So again, if all of a sudden Escalante continues to run some high 48s as he goes across now, 48.8, his personal best lap. His teammate is back there about a second off of 49.7 for Ty Scott. And then they have a bit of a gap over Hayden Gillum and Bobby Fong, who are back there battling for 4th and 5th. But they're doing 50.10, 50.6. So the guy right now that's on the move, 8.2 seconds behind, Richie Escalante, is now of Josh Herron.
So, what is that, Jay? 3 seconds, over 3 seconds. Herron's given back to Escalante, but Escalante, 56.3, 8.4 on that first split. He's really working those Dunlop tires, but for Herron, it's no big dramas.
You're right.
Although it is a minute and 50 seconds before he sees his pit board.
Yeah.
But, you know, with 8 seconds, you look back there and all that lap traffic. The good thing is that Escalante has a very distinguishable number this year. So Herron's going to be able to see it, but I don't think he's going to worry about it until he's probably, what, 5 seconds, 4 seconds?
I don't think he's going to worry about it at all. This guy, he's won the Daytona 200. He knows what it's all about. He's seasoned. He's got this place sorted. And right now, I bet you right now he is not thinking that this is where he would be 25 laps into this race, in the sense that he'd have this big lead. I think that we all thought that there would be at least maybe 4 or 5 guys right now up in this lead group. And right now, Herrin, he's not going to even worry about this stuff right now. And the confidence he's got in his crew and his team when he does come into the pits, he's just got to not make any big mistakes.
Jason, you're absolutely right. When I talked to Herrin about his race strategy, he said the first part of the race was just kind of feel it out, see what happens. I don't think he was expecting to have a lead like this or such a big gap. He said this second stint is the most crucial part of the race for him, because he needs to set himself up for that third stint. So as he's clicking off these laps, he's just going to try and keep getting farther and farther and farther away, so that he does have room for error if there is any, as he's trying to get around this back marker, it looks like here, in that second pit stop, so that he can be in the best position possible to try and win this race.
Yeah, it's a great report, Hannah. The thing is Greg, it goes back again. 49.9 for Herrin, 50.5 for Richie. So we know Richie probably got some traffic in a bad way. And for Herrin, he's not going to worry about any of that, as it looks like Eli Block has gone down, Greg. It looks like, trying to figure out where this could be. Might be the chicane area, but he is up and trying to get that bike started. And Richard Cooper has crashed, Greg. What a shame. And this, Greg, when you have a bad pit stop and you start pushing, trying to make up that time, this guy knew he had the capabilities of running in the top 3, and he did. He led the Daytona 200, and I feel so bad for Richard Cooper right now. This team has done a really great job getting their riders up to speed. Looking a little further back at his teammate, Peter Hickman's back there in 15th right now, so he's doing a nice job as Herrin just continues to roll on, Greg. 8.8 seconds was his lead the last lap through.
Coming up on the 71 is Josh Herrin. He'll take his time to get through the chicane. As I say that, Josh was like, okay, I got to kind of figure this out. And this is really one of the hardest parts about the mid part of this race, as you have riders that have different skill sets. They have different crew levels, Jay. So like how some of these riders that are in the back, they might be pushing and saying, look, I don't have quick change stuff. I'm going to have to try to make this tire. They may have come in and got fuel, and so they're feeling the bike move around quite a bit. Herrin's never ridden around them as some of these other front runners, and so it can get a little bit dicey.
How many of these guys from mid-pack on have gone out and done 57 laps anywhere in a row, or like come in, they might go to track days, they might go to, there's nowhere you can really do that.
Yeah.
So the thing is even though they've set a time and they've got themselves into this race, their average speed or their average lap time is probably going to be 2 or 3 or 4 seconds slower than their fastest they've gone. As you can see, these 3 guys are not tied together. You have Brandon Posh pulling out of the slipstream of Mesa and Josh Hayes. 3 different brands here. GSX-R 750 of Posh gets through on Hayes on the R6, and the Boulder Motorsports of Mesa. They are back here running right now, 7, 8, and 9. Lap times, Greg, you can see here, 50.4, but 52 is for Hayes and Mesa.
Yeah, I think if you look at, you talked about this earlier, Jay, the losers and the winners.
Yeah.
I would say in terms of the speed of the pit stop and positioning on the racetrack, Josh Hayes definitely made out in that one, as did Kayla Yakov. Yakov now back in 12th place and having a good run. As for her teammate PJ Jacobson, we mentioned earlier that PJ has a pit lane speed limit violation. What that does is it adds 15 seconds to his time. David Anthony as well, who's back in 17th place with that same penalty for pit lane speed limit violation. So that means that they exceeded that 60 kilometers or 37 mile an hour limit within pit in and pit out. And that, of course, a lot of people talk about it. That is the one thing that you don't want to do. And in talking with Cooper's team and Hickman's team, Jason, on the Triumph, they were talking about where they have their pit lane speed limiter set. And they said, look, it's 60K, but we have it set at 56 kilometers an hour because we want to give ourselves a buffer just in case of a surge or something happens.
You don't want that kind of thing. Last lap through, 50.1 for Herrin. The lap before that, he was almost some 2 seconds slower. Escalante's got that lead down now, Greg, to 6.5 seconds. So 6.5 seconds back is Richie Escalante as we continue to watch Mesa and Josh Hayes fight with each other here, and they're getting in that draft of Brandon Posh, who's another guy that's going to be trying to work himself back into those 49s. And here you go, Greg, is a little bit, look a little further back. You got Teague Hobbs in this thing, and there's Kayla Yakov, and she's got Ben Young right behind her, the 2-time Canadian Superbike champion down here at Daytona. Great to see Ben Young operating right here inside the top 13, and these 3 are going to be ripping around together. For Kayla, for all these riders, really, all very, well, I know Ben's not young, but young to the 200 probably. He's probably not going to appreciate me saying that, but for Kayla and Teague Hobbs, you know, they're putting in their laps, both doing really nice job, Hannah.
Kayla certainly is. This is her first ever Daytona 200, as you mentioned. One pit stop out of the way. I'm sure she's looking forward to the next one. She said she's trying not to put too much pressure on herself for this race because the team isn't putting any pressure on her at all. But as we know with Kayla, sometimes she can be her toughest critic. Experiencing racing in Europe has really helped her learn a new track, and that was definitely beneficial in learning a monster that is Daytona.
Yeah, not to mention for the number 19 on the Rahal Ducati Moto with Expel, this is the most amount of laps she's had back-to-back as well on this bike so far. So learning every step of the way. You saw up the road just a little bit was one of Kayla's teammates. I believe that was the 15 of PJ Jacobson, but you'll notice he is down behind her. Yeah, there's the number 15. Now he is actually in 16th place because of that 15-second pit lane speed violation. So that's the difference between what you see on the racetrack and what's actually on the screen, on the left-hand part of your screen on the pylon.
And there goes Kayla. She looked like she got into the draft to Teague Hobbs, and she pulled out of that. You can see her as she's going to go by. Now Teague's going to do what he can. She should lead him off into the chicane, although let's see what happens here as these two go into the chicane. They can both see PJ up there, and they both want to catch him. They probably don't know that PJ has got that 15-second penalty. Ben Young just falling off the back of these guys just a little bit. So as we start to look at even their lap times, mid-51s right now for these three.
Suzuki GSXR 750 inline 4-cylinder versus that V2 Panigale of the number 19 Yakov. And you can see in and out of that draft that if it were coming down to that final lap, Yakov would have the nod. And they're reeling in PJ quite quickly.
The fact that they've caught PJ this quickly too, you know, if the speed that she's going right now is great. And if you watched this team on Thursday, that brand new team, they got here, they got all their stuff late, they got a couple days up at Jennings, but their Thursday, Greg, I think, oh, she gets up there a little wide, but their Thursday was a rough one here at Daytona, and that team worked so hard on Thursday night to get these bikes in a better spot for their riders. And Friday was a lot better, and even this morning, like I said earlier, they worked on these bikes again, and they're even closer now. So,
and this team running Pirelli tires here in the Daytona 200, and they will switch back to the Dunlop tires for the MotoAmerica Super Sport season, as that is the spec tire.
And you'll see her, she's actually going to get a sniff of the draft here, I think, off of PJ, but they're both around the same size. As you can see, Ben Young has caught up to the back of Teague Hobbs. So Kayla is on pace right now. She's doing some fast laps. Her last lap through was a 51.7. She's going to go draft and past PJ Jacobson down that back straightaway.
PJ doesn't look comfortable at the moment.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't look. PJ Jacobson, who won Superbike race last year, and we know how talented this guy is. A lot of experience, World Supersport, World Superbike. He's been all over the world. So he's going to draft right back past Kayla, and this actually will help them to probably pick up a little bit of mile an hour, obviously, and pick up some lap times. And they should be able to separate themselves maybe a little bit further away. As you see Kayla lighting the thing up on the exit of turn 6 as she gets getting ready to go up on that banking.
So that battle for 11th place continues. Once again, PJ, her teammate behind her, Jacobson, back in 15th place. So you have the flurry of the new team, that Rahal Ducati Moto. These two are supported by Expel, and Corey Alexander is roller die informing, and so they're running 11th, 14th, and 15th.
Yep. And you can see there that tail ender just pulled in front of Teague and them coming down into the kink. So again, that gap's going to get spread out between the two Rahal teammates. And a little bit further back, Bobby Fong. He's actually opened up about a 1.5 second lead, it looked like, over Hayden Gillum. So Bobby Fong, another guy, is trying to make up for not maybe the best pit stop that they could have had with that wrench GSXR 750. So you can see that he's pulled out. Him and Hayden Gillum have been kind of riding around together.
Yeah, they were actually just like a couple tenths of a second apart.
Yep.
So what has happened?
It was a 51-1 for Bobby and a 53-6 for Hayden Gillum. And I'm looking for Hayden. Yeah, he's sticking out our window. We see Bobby go through, and Hayden Gillum has gone through. And he has got his lap back down to a 51-4. So, yeah.
So the running order has Josh Herron out front by 6.8 seconds, Richie Escalante and Ty Scott. Bobby Fong, the number 50, in 4th spot with Hayden Gillum in 5th. Our top 10 have come across the stripe, so 27 laps to go. We would think that the pit window is going to open up somewhere around lap 36, Jay, to 40. Is what we're looking at.
Yes.
You got to do enough laps. I mean, look, if you take 57 and divide it by 3, if my math's correct, I believe that's 19.
Yeah.
You know, and so some of these riders came in at 17. So the question is, do you get that done early, and does the bike go 20? We know that for the GSXR 750 of Brandon Posh, it was right around that 20 lap mark. So you're going to have to extend this at least.
But you got to take the siding lap and the other lap in as well, the siding lap and the warm-up lap. So yeah, you got to equate all that.
On the high banks of the Daytona 200, Hayden Gillum, the number 95 in 5th spot. And for Hayden Gillum on that Vesra Racing GSXR 750, one of the most talented riders in the field, doing a great job.
He's not even done after this race.
No, he's not?
He's not even done. He's got to do a bagger race after riding 57 laps around Daytona. So, you know, he's got his head down. Top 5 right now for Gillum. I think that Vesra guys would be pretty stoked on this. I'm really keen to know what happened where he lost that 2 seconds on Bobby Fong. And it really, to be honest, it hurts both those guys because they could have been drafting and redrafting each other. This guy here, 50 flat on his last lap through, he's holding that gap at kind of 6.6 seconds over Richie Escalante. And yeah, Greg, you got to expect to start to see Herron's probably going to pit lap maybe 36, so he's probably about 4 laps away from that window, three to 4 laps away. And when he said to me today, I was talking to him, and he said, I'm going to kind of pace and see who I'm going in the pits with. I want to go in the pits with somebody. He said, so I'm going to keep an eye, even though my board might say L1 or whatever to come in. He's like, I'm going to keep an eye on it. I said, Josh, we ran out of gas here 2 years ago. You might want to check yourself on that. And he laughed, and he said, yeah, I'm going to be paying attention to that.
Well, of course,
and when you run by yourself the whole time, Greg, you're using more fuel.
More fuel. That's critical as well. I'm sure the team is allotted for that because they've been keeping an eye on fuel consumption ever since they got here. And I remember talking to Josh Herron after the first session of the weekend, and he spent that entire first practice session by himself. So they got a good idea of fuel consumption. The question is, how much can they go and how good do the tires feel? Because if he comes in at lap 36, that's going to leave him 21 laps to go.
And when you look here, this is Kayla. She's come into the pits already, Greg, on lap 31, which means she's got to go out and do 18 laps on these tires, and she's only been going 15 to 16 laps on them as they are. I mean, fuel-wise. So she's got brand new rubber as she heads out, but will she be able to make the distance?
No, because that's 33. We go 57, Jay.
Right. So she's got she's been pitting on
24 laps.
I realize.
So she's got a 3 pit stop strategy.
Yes, that's what it's going to end up having to be, right?
Yeah, 100%,
so
100%.
yeah, she's going to end up having to come in 3 times. So we'll see how that goes because everybody else will be on a kind of a 2 pit stop strategy. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So Herron holding it steady at 6.7. Here's Richie Escalante. A lot of people talking about Escalante, his speed from last year, what he was able to do when he went out and did a 147.833 earlier on this weekend to own the lap record, but also his teammate Ty Scott. So if you didn't know about it yesterday, we had a 12 rider, the top 12 riders on time, did a time attack that set those first couple of rows, and it was Ty Scott who ended up going the fastest on his Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzuki and is your pole sitter. But as we continue to burn these laps off, it looks like Bobby Fong is starting to catch Ty Scott. Jay, what are the lap time difference that we've seen?
It's about a second. So Bobby's got his head down. So it might, I know that Hayden did that 53 and that kind of messed things up. Hayden went by the stripe last time at a 50.5. Bobby Fong 50.1. And you know, to your point earlier, maybe Ty Scott's shoulder is starting to fatigue a little bit. 51.1. That also could be back marker, just speculating. But this is really good for Bobby Fong. Talking to his crew before they went out, they said, man, if we can get in the top 5, I said, I think Bobby can get in top 3. So right now, he's got that podium sitting right in front of him. And let's not forget, this guy has a regular day job as well. He actually works for Dainese. He's the track support rider here at the track for all Dainese riders as well. So he's got a full-time job as well as this race. And he's another one, Greg, that's got to run the bagger race after this race as well, him and Hayden Gillen both.
And of course, Bobby Fong, a Supersport national champion in MotoAmerica a couple of years ago on the GSXR 600 back then, before we got into the next generation classes. So in this middleweight performance class, Bobby Fong very familiar with these motorcycles. And what's interesting, Jason, from a it looks like, is that Hayes?
Oh man, Josh, this place has been so cruel to him, and it can't be gas. I don't think it would be gas, but he's down on the apron. This looks like it's the one that's going to be bringing him down into pit lane. He's been running around with Mesa and them, who just came across. Keep in mind, Greg, you know, we probably haven't documented it, but Josh had a motor go, I believe, on Thursday. Didn't do the second session. The team worked and actually had to drive out of Daytona Beach and go north to try to get this other motor sorted. And, you know, it just seems like they've been a little bit on the back foot all weekend long, and it looks like Josh's Daytona 200 might have come to a little premature end.
All right, so now Ty Scott, the number 7 Division Wheel M4 X-Star Suzuki under pressure, but Bobby Fong takes the shorter line up the inside on the wrenched motorcycle GSXR 750, and he is going to go right by Ty Scott. But this is the banking, so Scott drops down, gets on the tail section of Fong, and the draft and pass ensues. Is Ty Scott going to make the move into the chicane? They have 2 riders in front of them. Fong chooses that inside line. Scott more the traditional outside line. Fong gets it turned, no problem. They'll get held up a little bit in the chicane just from the difference in speed. Fong looking, that's a good strategy though, Jay. He kind of rolled off a little bit and then got the drive. Yeah. And I think that's what Bobby's trying to use, that slingshot.
I can't see the number, but I believe it's one of the Trulove brothers in front of him there in the blue, and it's Diego Perez on that R6. So as Bobby Fong makes his way through it, I just can't see that number. Is
I think it's 100. Oh, is it 107? Yeah.
It's I believe from England. It's one of the Trulove brothers there.
Yeah, that would be Harry.
Okay, it's Harry Trulove there, all the way from England. We remember seeing them battling in the lead draft last year. Both the brothers were. So Bobby Fong and Ty Scott make their way through. And now they got one more person they got to get by here in the International Horseshoe. They should both be able to make pretty quick work of that. And then I didn't really see too many people off in front of them.
By the way, that is the battle for the podium. So Bobby Fong is in 3rd spot. There's the number 4 on that CSU One Cure J Force Racing Yamaha R6. His wife Melissa drove their rig all the way out from California, and that is a heartbreaker if you're a Hayes fan.
And I just saw Ben Young, I thought, might have been his teammate, Greg, but the rear tail section was up in the air. So it's not Ben Young. He's still out there running around, but he has a teammate, and I think they may have had a problem. So
the lead continues at 6.8 seconds for Josh Herron over Richie Escalante.
And his pit window is pretty open right now, and there's PJ Jacobson coming in. We also see that Corey Alexander, unfortunately, looked like he got maybe a speeding on pit lane penalty as well. So that's going to put the 23 a little further back. Yeah, this is what I saw coming rolling down pit lane.
Bridgestone sponsored. And yeah, so they're going to work with the duct tape. Got to get that taped up so it stops flapping around. And on the left-hand side, it looks like PJ Jacobson.
Yeah, number 166 there, Greg. Trevor Daly. Yeah, Trevor Daly.
Yeah, he's on the team battle axe.
Yep. And it looked like he had a problem. I saw him come down. You can see him taping that tail section together as PJ Jacobson gets out of pit lane. And he's in and out. So that team did a good job getting Trevor Daly back out. Here's Brandon Posh, Stefano Mesa. Keep in mind, these guys were running around earlier with Josh Hayes, and I believe that's Carl Haneke or Marvin Fritz just in front of them. The lead at the front, Greg, 52.4 that last time by Herron, 49.4 for Escalante. So we're at under 4 seconds now. 3.9 seconds is the lead. And you can see Fritz here leading Brandon Posh and Mesa across the line.
That's for 6th, 7th, and 7th, 8th, and 9th place. Currently, these riders still have their second pit stop to go.
Look at the difference that it was 59.2 to a 56.7 in the first split between Herrin and Escalante. So Herrin must have had a lot of traffic on that last lap through. He's already made his way at a 57.0 out and a 57.2 for Escalante. So he's pulled a couple tenths. There's Harry Truelove. Yep.
Looks like he is. Doesn't look like they're in any big rush. Oh,
like
yeah, he's limping.
So I think he's done. It looks like he's shaking his head and telling the team, I'm done. So I'm not sure if Harry had an incident during the week, to be honest. So
obviously working that right knee.
Yeah, right knee looks like he's telling his team, I think I'm done here. So keep an eye back at the front here. I know Daytona is such a brutal place. We're looking for Herrin coming across the line, and I want to see what kind of time he rebounds from that 52 with, and it's going to be a minute 50 flat. So now Escalante should come back into view as we watch this 3-rider battle still for 7, 8, 9. Escalante might be on pit lane. Yeah, he's on pit lane.
Escalante has dove. He dives into the pits. And so Escalante, we'll see how quick this pit stop's going to be.
These guys got to get him in and out of here as clean as they can.
21 laps to go.
That was a little bit more relaxed.
He might have to go for 3 pit stops. I mean, if you're looking at Posh, who ended up going 20 laps and started running out of fuel, and there's 21 to go for Escalante on this Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzuki.
Look at this windscreen, Greg. See the windscreen's cracked or broken?
Yep.
That's either going to be from debris, or that's going to be him saving a high side and probably driving his head through the windshield. I'm hoping it's debris, but yeah, you can definitely see that windshield smashed on the front, and he's shaking his head, not exactly sure. You know, that pit stop was a lot better, though. A lot better.
It's not that it's not going to affect you. It might a little bit.
Yep.
I mean, the windscreen, you get down behind the bubble here, specifically at Daytona, for the longest amount of time. And as long as Richie has clear vision, but the arrow of it is going to be a little bit. And you can see Richie on the left part of your screen as he's pointing to the windscreen. Something happened as he takes a drink. But what a great pit stop from his crew. So the 54 Escalante, who went in second place, goes back out onto the racetrack, and it looks like that is going to be Ty Scott, the number 70, 79, Teague Hobbs, coming in.
And again, these guys,
the 4th of the Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzuki bikes.
And again, Greg, to your point, again, it's 19 laps that they're going to have to run here to get these guys to the line, and I haven't seen either one of these teams do 19 laps yet, right? So they're coming in on lap 36. Herrin is in. Is he out of fuel? Oh, he's got it going again. So something was going on, but this is, again, you push the fuel window, but when you're out there running around on your own and you don't have anybody to draft with, but he's got a big enough gap, so let's see what happens.
But the other thing I'll say, Jay, is when he came in for the first time, I saw him struggling to hit that pit lane speed limiter button.
Okay.
Perhaps that's what he was struggling with.
Or he killed it, you know?
Yeah, he killed it by accident, trying to go for that pit lane speed limiter button. I'll only say that because it was very awkward the first time he came in. The bike lunged forward.
You're right.
And the way that the video cut, we could have missed something there. So, all right, so that's Loris Baz, his teammate for the Steel Commander Superbike, as he's trying to get that. It looks like he's doing a really good job. No problem. He's looking at the total fuel. Hey, he's the perfect fuel. He's 6'4", 6'5".
He's done World Endurance too, so he knows about it. Here's Hayden Gillum. Let's see how the Vezra guys do on getting their rider in and out of the pits.
He's got to get off the bike as they put the fuel on there. Of course, Vezra, as a team, championship winning in Weir Endurance racing over the years, so they know how to get this done as well.
Mark Young there, pumping that front brake lever up, and Hayden Gillum gets in and out. I also saw Brandon Posh in here, and I saw Bobby Fong. So Bobby Fong got out of the pits. So we're going to wait for all this to kind of do its stuff again as far as the timing and scoring. You see Josh Harris' team has went and retrieved his bike.
Yeah, this is going to be
That's a good pit stop for Brandon Posh.
Very good, but this is going to be super interesting with 20 laps to go on what fuel strategy. We might see riders having to come in to get a splash of gas.
Wow.
If they're really can only go 17, 18, not even 19 laps. This is going to get super interesting. And it looks like your boy Hickey,
13-time TT winner, Peter Hickman here. And talking to him, I said, so what do you think about Daytona? And he absolutely loves it. Hannah, what do you know about Pete?
Notice they are not changing that front tire. Their plan is to go the entire race distance on a single front tire. So to prepare for that, he's been running as long of stints as he possibly can on one front.
Interesting. Yeah.
Very interesting.
I said, is this place like anywhere you've ever ridden? You know, you got to remember this guy's raced Macau. He's raced all over. Northwest 200s. He's won British Superbike races and stuff. As Ty Scott now makes his appearance onto pit lane. And Pete said, this place is different than anywhere I've ever ridden, and he loves it. So it's really nice to see these international guys come over and love Daytona as much as they do. Let's see how these guys get Ty Scott in. They've had 3 riders already come in. Ty Scott off the bike, getting a drink.
Chloe doing double duty there with the drink and the fire extinguisher. That is critical because there was a penalty for Bobby Fong's team earlier with fire extinguisher. Hannah, what do you know about Josh Hayes in his day?
Well, to say the least, Josh Hayes is not the happiest we've ever seen him walking back down to his pit here, but I checked in with the crew member that was walking with him, and he said it was just an electronic malfunction, so Josh Hayes is disappointed to be out of this one.
Okay, so real quick, let's get to this. I watched Herring come through here. He's got 3.9 seconds on Escalante now. This is very, very doable for Escalante. He's got to try to run some really fast laps. This guy is still out in front. And for Herring now, when he sees, look at this is all part of the 200, taking the long way around. And for Herring now, he's got to get his head down a little bit. He's going to see when this all sorts itself out that he's got under a 5-second lead, and that's still very manageable.
Well, the second pit stop is done and dusted, and Josh Herring is leading, but his lead has diminished. We'll see by how much in a moment. So Herring on the high bankings. We're still waiting for more people to dive into pit lane and have this race sort itself out when it comes to timing and scoring. Into the chicane goes Josh Herring. I don't know, Jay, if you're Richie Escalante, the question, whoa.
Richie can see him now.
I know, but that's the other thing too, is we know the history from last year and what happened in turn number 1.
Crazy.
Richie's smarter for it in terms of positioning with Josh Herring. But the question now comes down to who's got the legs, who's got the positioning. If Escalante can chip away at it slowly and have the patience, there's no reason at this point, if you think you have the speed, to gobble up that time and start to work the tire. Because if Escalante has the fuel to go the 20 laps, that'll be the difference.
And he can see him right now really easily. When they came across the tri-oval, he can see Josh Herring just up the road.
Marvin Fritz was in 4th place as he came into the pits, and his experienced World Endurance team gets to work, and they are as casual as you like it. Oh, there's a little problem with the rear tire. It goes in, the axle spinning, and so off goes Fritz. As now Stefano Mesa in the pits on his Boulder Motorsports Ducati Panigale V2, a rider who has won plenty of races in his career here at Daytona, and he understands how to work the banking, especially when it comes to that start-finish line. We do know Josh Herring's out front. Jason, you called it. It's 3 seconds flat to Richie Escalante, but Josh Herring just goes 56.379, the fastest Sector 1 time. Josh Hayes back out onto the racetrack, down a couple of laps, but the team was able to fix that electrical issue, and so out goes the Yamaha rider.
And he's followed Mesa out. Mesa has nobody around him right now, so Hayes can actually go out and help Mesa a little bit if that was the case, but Josh is probably going to just feel this thing out and see what it's like. I'm waiting to see this second split. It's a 30.8 for Herring. He opened up 0.6 of a second just in that first split. A couple tenths have been closed back on him in the second split. This is going to be in the low 49s this lap here from Herring as we wait for his arrival, as you see him come off that turn 4 banking and come to that tri-oval. But we got 17 laps, and he's already done 2. He's 17 laps to go, Greg. So 22, so he's got 49.2 is his fastest lap of the race. He just went 49.3. And I'm waiting for Escalante. He's gone through at a 50 flat. So 3.7 seconds. There he is. There's the difference. You can see Escalante is just behind him now. And man, it just gives you so much determination to try to go catch that guy. As it gets, false neutral. You can see it really early there, Greg. That bike wasn't going into gear for him. And this is all a part about pushing, isn't it? You know?
Yeah. So a false neutral, oftentimes when you're shifting that bike, if you don't get a really good crisp shift, it kind of hangs up between the two gears, and you can't get the bike slowed, Hannah.
Yeah, and as Jason was kind of saying before, Richie Escalante had that bobble. He's got his eyes set on Josh Herrin, trying to chip away at that gap. When I talked to Richie, he said at the beginning of this weekend, he came out swinging his first time on track, a little bit too hot. Yesterday, he wanted to dial it back a little bit. After how frustrated he was leaving that first pit stop, and now with that chipped windscreen, it seems like there's definitely some fuel to Richie Escalante's fire that he can use, and he's got his sights set on Josh Herrin, and especially after what happened between the two of them last year, I'm sure that Richie wants some redemption.
And normally I would agree with you on this one, Hannah. I think the thing that he's got to think about is obviously he doesn't know if Herrin can go the distance. He doesn't, the team's going to know if he can go the distance or if he's going to need a splash of gas, plus the tire situation. How much tire is Richie Escalante willing to risk if he's got to come in with like 2 laps to go or something and grab some fuel? And I can tell you right now, Herrin is pushing the issue. He just goes 56.342, the fastest Sector 1 split time we have seen in the last 41 laps.
7/10 quicker in that first split. The identical second splits. 48.8 fastest lap for Herrin for his race. So he knows what's going on here. And Greg, you know what? Escalante doesn't have time to worry about his tires or any of that at this moment. He knows what's in front of him. He's got to catch this guy and then worry about the tire situation when it appears, because you can see the gap, how much bigger the gap is. It's now 4.7 seconds. It was a 48.8 to a 49.8. 1 full second quicker was Herrin over Escalante. So right now, when Herrin starts dropping the hammer the way he is, it puts a lot of pressure on the 54, and it will take us back again, Greg, to that first pit stop where these two riders had very different outcomes on that pit stop strategy or in their pits themselves. Escalante's got to ride really, really hard, and from the front, Herrin can force somebody else into a mistake. Escalante's got to just try to ride as clean as he can and get the back markers in the right spots.
Richie Escalante visually going to be checking, because those pit boards, the only way riders get communication is through those pit boards or looking around. Not something we recommend at the high speeds, the high bankings here at Daytona. These super sport machines in a draft getting close to 180 miles an hour right now with the field spread out. Looking at the top speeds, 168 for Herrin, 167 for Escalante. Ty Scott at the 169 mark. Back in the field, Corey Alexander just went 174 to pass Ben Young for 12th position. You can see Ben Young there in 13th place. You get such a variety of speeds here as it relates to the draft. I mean, it can be as much as 8 mile an hour, the difference, and versus pushing your own air. And then, Jay, you talked about it as well. If you're out there and you're a 4.7 second lead of Josh Herrin, who Richie Escalante has 17 seconds over Ty Scott, who's got 10 seconds over Hayden Gillum, you're burning an awful lot of fuel at full throttle.
Yeah, and so is Josh, right? Like Herrin's doing the same, 49.0, and you can see Escalante is going to have a couple of back markers here that he's got to try to get through, and that's going to be hard for him to, well, no, it's not going to be hard for him. He'll get by both these guys probably going, no, this is it right here. This is what you're just sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm losing so much time, and he sees Herrin up there. Herrin's got some of his own though, doesn't he, here as they enter the kink and get into that second horseshoe. Got the number 135 just going past him at the moment. Oh, yeah, see, it's like, so both guys this lap are going to see their first splits, and he's come up on the back of Taylor Knapp now. Can always tell Taylor Knapp gets that right foot dangling going into the left-hand turn. Taylor Knapp, obviously, test rider for Dunlop. Got an opportunity to come out here and ride the Apex Triumph, so he was pretty fortunate to be able to do that. Whoop, I'm trying to just see if I can see Taylor on our top 20.
Looks like Hickman. They're coming up on to, yeah, there's Hickman. Peter Hickman, 765. Gets lapped by Josh Herrin. And here's first bid here at the Daytona 200. And look, I got to stand next to Hickey. He's a tall bloke.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he's a big fella, and that does not help you at the high banks of Daytona.
So that was Diego Perez, I think, that they had also passed, right?
Yeah,
so
that was Diego Perez out of Spain.
Who did a really great job this weekend. Diego came here, was in our Group B qualifying and practice sessions, and often led those. You see Corey Alexander. This is a big group. It's Kayla, Teague Hobbs, Blake Davis, PJ's in there. And Corey Alexander goes around the outside of Teague Hobbs as they go into that international horseshoe. So you've got all three of the Rahal riders hanging out together, and then you've got a couple other guys running with him, and Blake Davis and Teague Hobbs. Blake's, I think, where's Blake? 20th place right now, yeah. So Blake's a couple laps down to our leaders, and I don't think that Herron is too far behind these guys. I think he's probably 15 or so seconds behind this group. So as he gets closer, the guys that Herron's catching, Greg, become harder to pass.
So up ahead, there's Kelyakov on the 15, but Corey Alexander looking to figure this bike out in his first year in the Super Sport class in a long time. "14 laps to go in the 2024 edition of the Daytona 200. Josh Herron leads by 5.6 seconds over Richie Escalante. Tyler Scott in third. And we're watching this battle. Now, PJ Jacobson's in 14th place. He's the number 15. He's actually behind on time Corey Alexander, who's in 11th place. So Corey Alexander has a time penalty. So Teague Hobbs, who's in the mix, he's on the 79. He's right there middle part of your screen. He's actually leading Corey Alexander, Kelyakov, Ben Young, and PJ Jacobson on time as the timing and scoring. So that's why when you look on the left part of your screen, that has a lot to do with pit lane speed violations and adding 15 seconds to the time of the riders because of that pit lane speed violation. Ooh, yeah, and it looked like Blake Davis a little bit squirrely over the bumps.
All getting close down in there into turn one. You can see that they got a tail ender they're going to have to go by, and Teague Hobbs, Corey's obviously good on the brakes into the International Horseshoe, feels pretty comfortable, but he's going to be met with a back marker there. Makes it a little bit tough for him to go by, but they make their way through. You can see off the back there's Ben Young. The 86 is still in there, Greg. He's running 13th right now. Really good effort from him as Corey goes up underneath Teague Hobbs in that second horseshoe. So Corey's got pace. Corey had a really rough Thursday. He was doing minute 54s around here. Bike was some 20 mile an hour down, and overnight the team remapped the bike, did some changes for him, and just getting him more comfortable. And when you talk about big guys, Corey's another one that's kind of like Hickman, isn't he? He's 6'2", 6'3", and very hard to get him fitted on a bike right. And the Ducati's pretty small cockpit there. So here we go. Josh Herron 6 seconds up at a 49.3 that last time through. He's done a really good job.
"13 laps to go in the Daytona 200. Josh Herron continues to lead the way. 6 seconds now the gap between himself and Richie Escalante and Ty Scott. Both riders on the Vision Wheel M4X Star Suzuki, all trying to chase the Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati of Josh Herron. Coming out of the chicane, Josh Herron on the high bankings. He's going to have 12 laps to go in this race. And Jason and I are sitting up in this booth with riders that came in with 20 or 21 or 22 laps left in this race. Do we have another pit stop ahead of us? Is it going to be for tires? Is it going to be for a splash of gas? Is there somebody in this race that could surprise us, Jason, and make it all the way to the end? If some of these top riders have to come into the pits, we could see someone like Bobby Fong or Hanukkah end up winning this race.
Well, what's crazy is Escalante, I believe, pitted even a lap or so earlier than Herron, didn't he? So then you start to think, where did Ty Scott pit and how far back is he? We'll let you know how far back Ty Scott is here in third, but it's going to be 25 seconds that he is behind the leader. Then you're going to look at Hayden Gillum, who is now in fourth. So he's actually passed Bobby Fong somewhere along the line, whether it be better pit stops or whatever the case is. Hayden Gillum goes through. He's 36 seconds back. And then Bobby Fong is going to come through at 44 seconds back. Those guys there, Greg, like to your point, Gillum and Fong, they're still in that window that they could win this race if these guys don't make it to the end of the race on fuel and have to pit.
We'll be keeping an eye on that drama as it unfolds, as we have about 11 and a half laps to go in the Daytona 200 2024. Boy, back in the field, things have really started to sort themselves out. As we look at Richie Escalante, barely used the draft and pass to get around one of our lap traffic. And through the chicane, here comes Josh Herron. A good look at how well that Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati Panigale V2 is working for Herron. And Herron seemed relaxed all weekend long.
He just literally has just looked so comfortable, hasn't he? It's like, I think once you win here, there's a confidence that you get coming into this place where you kind of know what it takes to go the 200 miles. And when you have the same crew year after year, we've heard Herron talk about this is his 3rd year with this team and how happy he is about that. And you get used to seeing familiar faces as Corey Alexander is now coming into the pits. This would be pit stop number 3 for Corey, and he had worked himself all the way up into the 10th place spot I had seen. So he's going to come in. Looks like he doesn't look like he's in a big hurry to get off the bike. I'm not exactly sure what's happening there. So it looks like it's just a regular pit stop as he talks to DJ. Not exactly sure what's happening here. So obviously this team had a 3 pit stop strategy for all their riders as Corey gets that bike going again. Brand new.
Yeah, like
Pirelli thrown on the back. He doesn't, like, it almost looked like there's something wrong. Yeah, there's something going on there. Maybe more than we know, but we'll see. We'll see. Maybe, like you said, maybe he was trying to find that pit lane speed limiter and was having trouble with that. As Hayden Gillum goes through, see Hayden Gillum, and
there goes Corey.
Yep. So it looks like that bike's working okay now.
Now the front tire, they didn't change the front.
No, they did not change the front.
So
just
they just
the rear.
changed the rear. So he's going to have a good confidence in the front tire. And so Corey's going to get after it.
You can see the bike's, it looks like he's having trouble shifting it though, honestly. So we'll keep an eye on this.
Bobby Fong.
Right behind him, isn't he?
So Corey just out in front of Bobby Fong. This would help Bobby a little bit lap time wise. Fong, our early race leader, one of them anyway.
Corey will have a look back. Yeah, Corey had a look back. I could sense it. Corey was going to have a look back. He saw Bobby out of the International Horseshoe, had another look. Looked like he was trying to let Bobby go through there for a minute, but this will definitely help him.
Hannah, how's it looking down there?
Guys, you can see the wind is still blowing hard and the clouds have definitely rolled in. I'm feeling a couple sprinkles here and there sporadically, nothing to be of cause for concern just yet.
All right, yeah, for one thing, like as Jason and I have a look up at the sky with 10 laps to go in this race, there's some lingering clouds around.
It's Florida.
Yeah, it's Florida. I mean, you know, it feels like Florida in the middle of the summertime, actually. Like, there's a thunder boomer come in, but hopefully not, and we definitely do not race the Daytona 200 in the rain.
So looking at the leaders again, 49.3, 49.3 for both your 2 front guys. Let's see what Bobby Fong, I want to see where Bobby's lap time is here. He was about half a second quicker than Gillum up the road in front of him, but he was 7 seconds behind. So Gillum flashes across at 51.4. Bobby comes across at 50.3. So he's going to start to try to get that gap down. But Greg, I don't see how we can't have a lot of these riders doing 3 pit stops in this race, and I don't really remember that being something that's happened in the past too often.
Well, I know in MotoAmerica Supersport when we did extended races last year, a lot of the teams were relying on some type of race stoppage, you know, and they literally put it into their strategy. And when we had a race last year that didn't have that, it caught quite a few of the teams out. So, you know, it's one of those things where you just have to go, look, my bike's only going to go 17 or 18 laps before it runs out of gas. And this is the way it is. Even though it's 19 laps times 3 is 57, it's just the way it works itself out, especially with these next generation bikes.
Yeah.
You know, there a lot of those bikes that have the larger displacement motors, like the GSX-R 750, the Triumph 765, you have the Ducati Panigale V2 at 999. They are not at 100% throttle, basically. And so the question is, how much fuel do they use?
Herron came across the line that time signaling something to the starter, so maybe he is also seeing that little sprinkle of rain on his visor or something that Hannah just said. So
I will tell you this, Jason, I hate to interrupt you, but
no worries.
With 49 laps in the book, the way the rule works, if we have a race stoppage from this point forward, this race will be over.
Okay. So when you start to see Herron's getting a little bit loose, looking at his pit board, so when you start looking at your pit board that intently, he's making sure that he's reading the right things. And there might say, you know, pit in 3 laps, 2 laps, whatever it might be. We'll see, because he still has 9 laps to go. And, you know, by our math, it's going to be close.
Now look at the riders up ahead of Josh Herron and what he has in store for himself. Now the thing was, Jay,
look at that thing. He's got that thing spinning, and not to interrupt you, but he's got that thing spinning, Greg, because he's had to push. Because when he came out and he saw that Escalante was only 3.8 seconds back at one point, he's got that out to 5 seconds. But these guys have been consistently in the 49s. The only two guys doing that.
But see, my point was going to be, as you said that Josh had the lead up to over 6 seconds. And so the question was, do you just come in? Because if you're going to have to make that stop, why not just come in now with a 5-second lead, get a new tire, get a splash of gas, guarantee yourself you're going to go to the end of the race, and gamble that Escalante needs to come in.
And keep in mind, the five people that he is actually catching are fast. It's Ben Young, Teague Hobbs, Kayla, and PJ Jacobson. So he's got fast people ahead of him that are going to take him another lap or two to actually probably catch up to. They are operating in the 52 range. So as Herrin comes across the line there, a 49.4, he is still pretty close lap time wise to his quickest, but you can see he's taking his time into turn 1.
Yeah, I noticed that, but Jay, also when he came across the line,
yep,
you know, where the checkered flag is in our officials, it looked like he was kind of pointing up. He's pointing up to the sky, and you know, I'm just wondering, Hannah, if you're feeling any more sprinkles. I know that this track is so big, you're a little isolated where you are, but any more sprinkles down there?
Still consistently sprinkling, very sporadically. It has not increased yet. I talked to one of the grid marshals, and race control was talking about it, but so far no word, and it has not progressed.
All right, thanks. There's a third pit stop for that Ray Hall Ducati Moto with Expel team. So Josh Herrin continues to lead the race. He's signaling to the heavens, but there's 8 laps to go. Seven and a half laps remaining for Josh Herrin, who is out front, trying to go for back-to-back Daytona 200 victories. Remember, for this rider, Josh Herrin, the first time he was able to pull off victory here in Daytona was back in 2010, and then comes in 2023 and does it again. Pretty incredible, JP, that we see Josh Herrin still at the top of his game after all these years.
Yeah, absolutely. And what it does for a rider's confidence to win here, and then obviously he's going to be getting on that superbike this year. We saw him win last year on that Ducati superbike, and then he's going to have a great teammate in Loris Baz, who we are really excited to see back here in America. So this team is on a lot of highs right now. They've done a lot of good things here in the last year or two.
And the one thing that I want to note too about Josh Herrin is I saw him last weekend at the team launch in the Poconos as Herrin just goes 48.9.
Oh my gosh, look at this, Greg.
Yeah, this is a lot of traffic, but you talked about team. Oh, there's Teague Hobbs, number 79, that Herrin's coming up to. But there are riders that are fanned out all over the place, and Herrin has got to pick the right line and the right drive. He's got to go all the way out to the edge of the racetrack. And of course, we know the GSXR 750 of Hobbs is super fast. Herrin looking for a way around right now. So Herrin, through a gaggle of lap traffic, is able to dispense with about half of it. But Jay, you were talking about Herrin being with the same team for a couple of years. Last weekend, they were in the Poconos at the Mount Airy Casino team launch. The next day, the entire team got into a bus and they drove together down to Roebling Road Raceway and practiced pit stops down there for a couple days of Dunlop tire testing. You know, it's just another way for you to get that team together, and they were hanging out. So they've been together for an entire week, maybe a little bit, right about a week at this point.
Hey, it'll all make it worth it here in about 7 laps if it all works out. As you can see him also coming up onto Josh Hayes, and he did a really nice job of getting through all those the traffic, if you will, in that in the infield. Let's see what the lap time is. He runs his best personal second split of the race on that tire that is spinning everywhere.
Through all that traffic.
Yeah, through all that traffic. The main thing is he lost almost a second, though, Greg, in that first split. But Richie Escalante's got to go through all of them as well. So we'll see. On that lap, Herrin goes 49.8. And Escalante, as he comes across the line, goes 49.5. So he lost 0.3 and all that with all that traffic. So overall, not bad for Herrin there. He's still got a 4.9 second lead, as you can see him coming up on Ben Young now.
So we have 6 laps to go in this race. And the big question for us is, how's the fuel mileage going for this Panigale V2? Does Herron have plenty, or is he going to have to dive in?
Seasoned guy there, Ben Young,
sees
the leader coming up, pulls over, and you can see Teague Hobbs doing the same for his teammate, trying to make it as easy for these guys as he can to just get out of the way, let the leaders go through. Again, the only two guys, that Hayden Gillum that last time in the 49s also, 49.9. Bobby Fong, 50.7. Bobby's got that down to 4.3 in that battle for 4th and 5th. How about Carl Haneke and Marvin Fritz? Such a great job from the Yart teammates, running 6th and 7th right now. Brandon Posh is 8th, Mesa 9th, and you just saw Ben Young go a lap down. He is running 10th, and I think he's the first Bridgestone runner that we have also. So really nice work for Ben Young. Oh yeah, that's right, Carl Haneke and Marvin Fritz. They are also on Bridgestones. Thank you for that correction.
You're welcome. Yeah, that's what they won the World Championship on in the FIM World Endurance Championship. A championship of which, Jason Pridmore, you are 2-time world champion. I know you don't like to talk about it, but you are, and that's the way it is.
Yeah, I got a little familiarity with that championship, and you know, for Bridgestone to come here and have 3 riders in their top 10 and continue to try to develop their tire for Daytona, and you look at the level of riders that Bridgestone put on their bikes this year coming here, there's a good showing for that tire company.
There's your leader, number 2, Josh Herron, Warhorse, HSBK Racing, Ducati, the Panigale V2. He, of course, will be racing the MotoAmerica Steel Commander Superbike Championship on the V4R this season.
I'd love to see what his pit board says. I wish we could see what the pit board says. And
that's a hard,
normally we'd get Hannah to have a look, but since the pit boards around anywhere near where she is,
halfway around
it makes it pretty hard. She'd have to put the joggers on and get over there, but it's a long way away. As he comes out of there, you'll see on the left-hand part of the screen, he's going to look over there, and he's looking right now to see what that board says.
Herron's come across the line. Obviously, he's already into turn 4. Richie Escalante is 5 seconds back. Ty Scott in 3rd place has come across the line. So you have 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th still waiting to come across, but 10th, 11th, and 12th, which is Young, Hobbs, and Peter Hickman, who have been lapped. They have come across the line. Kayla Yakov in 13th. True Love has moved his way up to 14th ahead of PJ Jacobson. So Hayden Gillum is 4th. Bobby Fong in 5th spot.
I love watching the way Herron modulates the throttle on the exit of turn 6. You'll see he just gets the thing spinning, and as he does that, the bike starts to get stood up. He's trying to get it up off the edge of the tire to stop that bike from spinning so much. It actually almost goes a little bit off camber there, Greg, on the exit of turn 6. So the bike will start to spin a little bit, and you can hear the Ducati and the modulation that Josh is using to continue to drive that bike forward. And it's a really neat thing to watch as he was able to get through that back marker as they came out of that turn.
Yeah, unlike the Panigale V4R Superbike, which he races, which has a very sophisticated electronic system, the Panigale V2 here in Supersport trim does not have any of those rider aids like traction control. So he has to do it, Josh Herron, all with his right wrist. Well, I could use a little bit of rear brake, I suppose.
I use a little bit of rear brake if he needed to, but and you know, I'm lucky enough that he lives in Southern California, so I get to see Herron at track days, and you know, he does some really fun stuff on the track, and he's got so much great bike handling skills. And we'll see here as he comes into this horseshoe if he looks over to that left again, and this camera here that we have, you can see there's the pit signals, and can you see P10 L5? That's for Ben Young. I'm looking for Josh's board. He's already gone through.
All Richie Escalante says is basically how many laps left, which is 4 to go, and that he's 5-4 behind.
Yeah, and I think Herron's board was down just a little bit further, so we didn't quite get to see his. But yeah, he's gonna have a plus on his board probably, right? That just tells him, hey, we've got 5 seconds on the guy behind us. And but you know, Herron's not going to know that Escalante pitted before him either.
Well, the other thing too is that, like, understanding where your fuel mileage is, but Josh is still pushing the issue. 49 flat, 48.8, 6.9 was Herron's fastest lap of the race. After his pit stop, which was what, 14, 15 laps ago, he just goes 49.0. That's only 0.2 of a second off of his fastest time. That is incredible.
And you might wonder why, like, how does he do it? And it's the little things like the throttle modulation that you see. These riders are capable of adapting to a tire that starts to go off. This is why you put the hours in on old tires as well as new. You want to be able to go out there and make sure that your bike is still going to be sustainable at some sort of speed late in the race, so that you're capable of getting within 0.2 or 1 something tenth of a second of your fastest lap when you're on a 16 or 17 lap sprint. 49.7 that lap time through because he had to go through some traffic. Escalante as well had to go through some. He goes 49.9. So Herron's lead continues to extend by about 0.2 of a second. He has consistently been in the 49s, and in this stint alone, Greg, he's pulled away by almost 2 seconds over the course of the session, over the course of this stint, after his second tire came on. So again, can you see it? There it is. L3 P1 plus 5.6. L3 means he's got 3 laps to go. He's on lap 54, and I'm sure that there are some people fingers crossed right now and holding their breath.
Yeah, I am sure that that's the case. Although the fuel calculations were done, and I'm sure they've left him with at least 1 lap of fuel after this to secure him the win, but he's still got a lot of racetrack to go. Over 7 miles here at Daytona International Speedway for Josh Herron, with about 2.5 laps to go in the Daytona 200, the 82nd running of this famous race. And Josh Herron on his Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati Panigale V2, trying to make it 2 in a row and secure himself in the history books as a multi-time winner. That would be 3. And Peter Hickman, unfortunately, he is out of this race. So close to the end for Hickman.
It's too bad, Greg. He was running in 12th. Our last time through was Hickman, and that was a real shame. Now, the other thing that pulling out this gap of 5.6 seconds does, as you can see, Richie Escalante has gone the quickest first split of the entire race, as Josh Herron goes past Stefano Mesa now. Mesa in 9th place. And the thing is, Greg, is this is going to allow Herron to maybe back it off the last couple of laps, depending on how Escalante does. 49.3 that time for Herron, 49.2 for Escalante, still 5.5 second gap. But he might be able to back it off tonight, maybe a minute 52 or a 53 on his last lap if needed.
I mean, the push from Escalante in sector number 1.
But don't forget, he came in a lap earlier still, too.
Yeah.
So Richie also, pit board wise, it looked like they were just giving him the distance he was to the leader, because he's got a huge gap over 3rd.
What a job the Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati New York team has done. I know that the crew, even though they have their superbikes for 2024, the focus for the last month has really been working on this motorcycle to make it ready for the Daytona 200. And this team, the Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzuki team, with Richie Escalante, putting 4 riders in the field, all those riders capable of winning this race. And yes, podiums are great, Jason. Escalante in 2nd, and his teammate Tyler Scott in 3rd. But really, when you look at the Daytona 200, it's all about that race win. And boy, Paolo Tribati from Ducati Corsa is here, not at MotoGP in Qatar, and he wants to see one of his Ducati Panigale V2s rolling into victory lane in the number 1 spot. Out of the chicane for the penultimate time in this race. Herron on the high bankings. I'm looking really closely at his right wrist. He looks like he's got the thing full stick. I don't think fuel mileage is an issue at all. And for Josh Herron,
here it is, Greg. White flag is out. Herron goes across the stripe. He's got 3.57 miles to navigate here at Daytona. He does a 49.6, and Escalante looked like he was slowing going across. He goes a 50.1, Greg, but we'll see. We'll see if my eyes are just deceiving me there. He came across the tri-oval by himself.
Well, I mean,
and it didn't look full stick. So let's see if we see Escalante come down into the International Horseshoe. There he is.
Like we said, based on what we saw from his teammate Posh.
Because it looked like he was running out of gas to me. He's running out of gas.
He is. And we knew it too, based on what we saw from his teammate Posh. That 20-lap window is a problem. So now the question is, can Escalante hold on to 2nd place, can even make it to the end?
Well, that's about where Posh had started to run out of fuel. This guy can literally put it in 6th and cruise around the banking and make sure that he makes it to the line. Escalante, there he is, Greg. He has got a huge gap. He's got a 38-second gap over the next rider, and it would be absolutely devastating if Escalante doesn't get on this podium today. He deserves to be up there, and he's going to have to do the exact same thing that Brandon Posh did and get himself there.
Could his teammate Tyler Scott get by him? That would also could potentially pole vault Hayden Gillum into fourth if Richie Escalante is not able to get there. But for this guy, Josh Herron, all the right moves from the beginning of the race.
And now, Greg, when you think that there might be a chance of fuel, he is going to short shift this thing around the banking and know that he's going to make it home. And there's probably not a better feeling in the world than knowing that you're going to be, is this three? Three times for the Daytona 200 for Josh Herron as he comes off turn 4 banking.
He won it in 2010. He won it last year. And now for Josh Herron, the number 2, he wins again at the Daytona 200 and takes the checkered flag. Jubilation from the Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati team.
Escalante, this is hurting me to watch because there's nothing he can do, Greg.
He's trying his best to get that motorcycle back. Mesa already in 9th place. Ben Young in 10th taking the checkered flag. Here comes Tyler Scott. It looks like he's able to go full stick with gas.
He's going to go by him, I think, because Escalante looked like, we're going to look around the apron there. You might see Escalante. He had a 40-second lead on his teammate going into the last lap. There's Escalante, and now it's going to be Hayden Gillum to see if he can catch. He's only 10 seconds behind Ty Scott. This is devastating for Richie Escalante.
Second place will go to the Vision Wheel M4 XR Suzuki rider, Ty Scott, as we continue to look for Richie Escalante, who is just trying to milk it home. But coming across the line is Hayden Gillum. So the 95 Gillum comes across the stripe. In 3rd place, Bobby Fong in 4th. And now Richie Escalante, after a last lap drama, will come home in 5th spot.
That's just brutal. That's just brutal to watch. It's like that guy has no luck. I mean, honestly, that is just bad luck right there. He rode his heart out that whole time and runs out of gas on the last lap. Man.
For the Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati team, they made their own luck. They had a fast rider, a fast motorcycle, a great strategy. They executed to perfection, and it nets them a 45-second win.
Unbelievable.
When's the last time you saw that in the Daytona 200?
Yep. Well, he's going to, quarterbacks do things for their offensive linemen, and this guy's going to have to do something for that crew for sure, because the pit stops were flawless. He rode perfect. Didn't put a wheel wrong the whole time. I was going to say that with about 5 to go, but chose not to say that. But he literally did not put a wheel wrong.
Josh Herron, Ty Scott, and Hayden Gillum on the podium. When we come back, we're going to have a chat with Josh Herron to find out what it's like to win his 3rd.
And our coverage will now continue. I am Jamie Howe, joined by Roger Hayden. Roger, we were watching this Daytona 200 unfold right in front of us, and just heartbreak there at the end for Richie Escalante.
Yeah, heartbreak just to be a half a lap short of gas there, just to put such a good race together and be on the podium and run out of gas there. On the last lap, he still salvaged 5th, but I mean, there's a big difference between being on the podium at the Daytona 200 than coming in 5th. He's going to be disappointed about that. You can see him pushing the bike in. He already overcame the broken windscreen there. Yeah. Not sure really what happened. Could have been debris or also sometimes getting on the banking or in other corners. Sometimes when the rear end steps out and you save it, it can throw you up on the windscreen.
We're going to, as you watch Richie with his head down, pushing that bike back, let's take a look at this final pit stop. And it wasn't so much, Roger, that anything went wrong on the stop. It was more so that the stop was 21 laps from the checkered flag.
Yeah, and even watching the race, and we seen how many laps was left. I mentioned I thought it was a little bit early because Posh, I remember, him being on the same bike, having trouble that first pit stop, and I thought that he tried to make it either 21 or 22, but these guys are, they have the calculation. One thing that might be a problem too was they might have been expecting, because Daytona, you're usually drafting somebody. You're usually in the pack, and Richie Escalante was out there by himself after that last pit stop. But man, it's all about the Josh Herron and what he did today, and his crew. They were perfect on pit lane. So we hear this burnout. Let's listen in.
How cool is that to be able, for 2 years in a row, to be able to pull your Ducati? Look at him, just that emotion coming out of him right now as he passes on the hugs. To be able 2 years in a row to ride into victory lane for the Daytona 200.
And the way he did it with 3 laps to go, he did a 49 flat. His best lap was a 48.8. Josh never put a wheel wrong and absolutely earned that win.
Yes, and he will be able to celebrate this one well. That was his wife, Rachel, that you saw in the picture over there. Look at the smiles on all of the faces of the crew members. There's Loris Baz there to celebrate. We saw him doing the fueling duties during those pit stops, so he certainly played his own role in this one. We'll see him out on the Superbike when we get to Road Atlanta, about a month away from right now. But these guys are going to go. They're going to be able to celebrate tonight, Roger.
And they should. We talk about this race really being a team effort, and Josh was able to get out of the pits with a 5-second lead, and from there he was able to control his own destiny, and what he did with his lap times was incredible, just how consistent he was and able to do those low 49s by himself lap after lap with that big lead. And, you know, you don't really see a guy what like Josh did today in the Daytona 200 just pull away like that.
And as everyone continues to come over to celebrate this victory, I have to imagine for Josh Herrin, this has to be just the biggest sigh of relief. They've been trying so hard and preparing for this race for such a long time, and you know the role that everybody plays in it is certainly well earned today. We're going to send it back next door to Greg White and Jason Pridmore.
MotoAmerica's coverage of the Daytona 200 is brought to you by Bridgestone Tire. Bridgestone, solutions for your journey.
Josh Herrin, 45.6 second margin of victory for him as he comes into winner's circle here at Daytona International Speedway, and he lights up that rear tire. Pridmore, he had plenty of gas to do the burnout. I'm not really sure gas was a thingy. Now let's take a look at these results, and as you look at the top 3, it's Herrin, Scott, Gillum, Fong, Escalante limps it home in 5th place. Hanukkah, Fritz, Posh, Mesa. We want to give a tip of the cap to all of the racers. 62, no red flags, amazing.
Unbelievable.
But it's all about the celebration, so let's get right down to Hanalopa.
Hayden Gillum, your 3rd place finisher in the Daytona 200, holding his new baby daughter, Ellie. Hayden, you set yourself up for success. What was it that was working so well for you that you were able to put yourself in a position to capitalize on a mistake from someone else?
I made a lot of mistakes. To be honest, I didn't know we were in the fight for the podium at the end. And, man, I ran wide a few times. And these guys, the Vezra guys, Mark, Rob, Ian, Brett, Gabriel, JD helping, like, they put some really, really, really good stops together. So they're the ones that deserve this and put us in the fight. Me and Bobby were kind of just messing around there at the end. I don't know if either of us knew we were going for the podium, but this is pretty awesome. Glad Vezra came back for this race and put it on the box.
Happy to see Hayden Gillum running the number 95 once again, 3rd place in today's race. Moving on over to 2nd place for Tyler Scott. Ty, I know you came across your teammate Richie Escalante there. It was probably pretty disappointing to see, but what made the difference for you in this race, starting from the pole between 2nd and 1st today?
Yeah, Hannah, I got to thank the whole Vision Wheel M4 XR Suzuki team, my mom, my dad, everyone for getting me here. Seb on the front wheel was absolutely incredible. Everyone, the pit stops went really smooth, and I can't thank them enough, and the race was really good, had good pace. Just lost Richie there at some point, and just kept putting laps down, and unfortunate to see him run out of gas. We had a little problem ourselves, but I'm happy with P2, but I really wanted to win.
Congratulations, Tyler Scott, 2nd place today. And today's race winner with his son Griffin, Josh Herrin, your back-to-back Daytona 200 champion. Josh Herrin, you led that race really early on. You took control of that pace at the front. You had 2 incredibly quick, incredibly flawless, from my perspective, pit stops. Could you have done anything better?
Oh, that one I owe all to my team. No one would have expected that after our pit stop in the race yesterday. I was riding out there I didn't even know what was going on. I was so scared. I literally ran out of fuel on pit lane, coming into pit lane on the first pit stop, I don't know. I can't even remember. I owe that all to my crew. I mean, that was amazing. We got in and out so fast. My entire family, thank you so much to Ducati USA, Ducati Corsa, Warhorse Racing, hsbkracing.com, best parts in the business. Thank you to KYT Helmets. That thing, last year my neck was killing me. This year I feel like I had no problems at all, so that was amazing. Alpine Stars Leathers. OnlyFans, man, we had some huge setbacks this week. They were supposed to be a bigger presence with us, and we had some setbacks. There's nothing we can do about that, and you know, I'm just happy to have them on board. They supported me for 3 years, so make sure you go and check out all the celebrations that we do tonight on my OnlyFans page, and man, let's get it again next year. The V2 was amazing. Thank you to Dunlop Tires. 2 Dunlop wins in a row. Feels amazing to have them up here. I think it's a Dunlop sweep, if I'm not mistaken, so that feels even better, and yeah, can't wait till next year.
Josh Herrin, your Daytona 200 champion, guys.
Wow, amazing for Josh, and he pretty much wrapped it up there, didn't he?
Yeah, like that crew did a great job. There's Paolo Giamatti sitting in the front with, of course, the legend, Geraldo Ferracci.
Some very happy Italians. We'll be back.
And we'll continue to watch these celebrations down here in Victory Lane. Roger, one of the things that I just noticed, the number of kids that are now present down in Victory Lane. A couple years ago, none of the riders had kids.
I just think all those kids are going to be battling in about 20 years trying to find their way back into Victory Lane, but on their own.
20 years. I've seen the minis that are out at some of our events. Those kids are only, what, 5 years old, 5, 6 years old?
It's incredible, and Josh really did a good job giving his crew the credit there, because we talked about it all weekend, how this race here is rider and crew more than other races, because all it takes, we've seen other guys have one bad pit stop and it ruined their race. And for Josh, he came in, and those guys did a phenomenal job on that pit stop, got him out with the big lead, and from there, Josh, you think about doing 57 perfect laps and, you know, controlling the lappers and controlling the gap, knowing when to push it and when to take the risk with the lap traffic that Josh had. It's a lot harder the way Josh did it. When you're in a big group and battle and you're drafting, you're kind of going back and forth and you're just kind of going with the flow. But when you're out by yourself, like Josh was doing, controlling the pace, like I said, just trying to do everything perfect, and it's just his lap times, and I kept telling you toward the end of the race, like I just could not believe the lap times he was doing.
Yeah, they continued to get better and better, and he was so consistent with them. But the other thing that he was also able to control, we heard him in that interview there with Hannah, was he said, I literally ran out of fuel coming down pit lane, and he was able to control himself and the emotion required to be able to get there to his crew, allow them to do their job, not overthink it, not overstep anything. And you see as he's put his head down a couple of times, and just the laughter, like the joy that comes out of him, like, I can't believe that this just happened.
And the experience he has, I think, just able to know he ran out of gas, knew he had a little problem, but did not create another problem by rushing into the pit stop or trying to do something else. And for Josh, I think he's really, you know, the last couple years is the best we've seen Josh ride.
And that smile on his face says so much. We're going to get ready to send it back next door to Greg White and Jason Pridmore, but you can continue to watch this podium celebration.
As podium celebrations get underway here at Daytona after the 2024 Daytona 200, let's get right down to Hannah.
A really tough break for Richie Escalante, running out of fuel on that last lap, but he nursed it across the line and certainly finished what he started with a 5th place finish. Richie, you got to be feeling all kinds of emotions right now. Take us through it.
Yeah, for sure. I really want to win today. I feel really good in the beginning, you know, just waiting with the group, and then in the pit stop, a little bit slowest pit stop, and then Herrin take a little bit gap, and then I just try my best by lap, pushing, and then the second pit stop, my team making a perfect pit stop, and after that, I just looking Herrin is right there, and I just pushing so hard to try to close the gap and maybe battle for the victory, but in the last lap, I just finished the fuel, and yeah, I just tried to move the bike to make happen and finish on the podium. But yeah, another top 5, the same thing in 22. I think Daytona not like me, and yeah, it's part of the racing. So I just want to say thanks to my team Hammer, Vision William for Extra Suzuki, working really good this week. my personal sponsor, Mission Food, all the sponsors to the team, my family. I try my best. Sometimes happens. So the most important is finish strong. I feel good. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and this is part of racing. And I really want to go to Superbike again and ready for Road Atlanta. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Richie. Guys.
I mean, what else can you say? Escalante, maybe Daytona doesn't like him very much, but we certainly do.
Man.
And Jason, when we look at Richie Escalante, of course, he is in the Superbike class, and after that performance, you figure he is going to be fast this year.
Is there anybody more classy than him? Amazing, and I feel for the guy. I think the thing I'm going to take away from this Daytona 200 is the hype that we had coming into it with how many riders were going to be capable of winning this race, and it was pit stops that ultimately cost so many people the places and things like that for this race. And the guy you see holding the Rolex there, his team did a tremendous job, and he was fast all weekend long.
62 racers started this 57 long race, lap race. No red flags. It went flag to flag, and Josh Herrin ends up with his third Daytona 200 victory, cementing himself in the record books. 45 seconds the margin of victory. Congratulations to all the teams, all the riders. We certainly hope you enjoyed the 82nd running of the Daytona 200 from Daytona International Speedway. For our crew, for Han and Jason, I'm Greg. Thanks for watching. See you next year.